I've adapted this chapter into the locked audiobook voice. The afternoon sun in July was still brutal, even with the day already passing its peak, that I pushed my delivery tricycle through the scorching streets, sweat running down my chin. My uniform had been soaked through long ago, clinging to my back and making every movement feel more irritating. There was only one package left in the cargo box. Damn, this weather is killing me. I wiped the sweat from my face and checked the address on my phone. Sunshine Garden, Building 3, Room 702. I froze. Wait, isn't that right next door? I checked the address again. No mistake. Same neighborhood. Same building. Same floor. I lived in 701, a cramped single-room rental. The apartment next door, 702, belonged to a newlywed couple. From what I had heard, both of them worked as executives at major companies. People from a completely different world. Whenever we crossed paths, they always looked past me like I wasn't even there. Of all places, my last delivery had to be their door. I muttered under my breath, but there was nothing I could do. A man had to make a living. I turned the tricycle around and headed home. After parking downstairs, I grabbed the package and walked up to the 7th floor. Standing in front of the expensive-looking security door of 702, I took a breath and forced my tired face into a professional expression. Then I pressed the doorbell. Ding dong. A moment later, I heard footsteps. The lock clicked. The door opened. A wave of cool air rushed out, mixed with the faint scent of perfume. After being roasted outside for hours, the sudden chill felt almost unreal. Standing in front of me was Sue Mann, the wife from next door that I had seen her a few times before. She was undeniably beautiful. The kind of beauty that was sharp and intimidating. The kind that made people instinctively lower their gaze. Today, she was dressed casually at home, and the first thing I noticed was simply that she looked completely different from the ordinary people I was used to seeing during my delivery routes. For a brief moment, I was caught off guard that I was still a normal man. After spending every day working under the sun and rain, seeing someone like her unexpectedly was enough to make anyone pause. My eyes lingered for a second longer than they should have. Only a second. What are you looking at? Her cold voice snapped me back to reality. I immediately met her eyes. There was no friendliness there, only annoyance and disgust. I'm here to deliver your package. Please sign for it. I quickly lowered my gaze and held the box forward. My voice sounded slightly Su Man took the package from my hand. Just because you deliver things, that doesn't mean you can stare at people. Her tone was sharp. I'm going to report you. What's your employee number? My face heated instantly. Embarrassment, anger, frustration, all of it mixed together. My hand slowly tightened into a fist. Then a man's voice came from inside. What happened? A man wearing casual home clothes walked over. He had gold-rimmed glasses and the calm expression of someone who had never needed to worry about money. Su Man's husband. He put an arm around her shoulder and looked at my employee badge. His gaze felt like a cold inspection. Lin Fei, right? His voice was calm, too calm. A delivery worker like you has quite the courage. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. You think you can look at my wife however you want. He adjusted his glasses. Fine. I'll remember you. He paused. I'm familiar with your district manager. His voice became colder. Tomorrow, you won't need to come to work anymore. I'll make sure someone takes care of this. He emphasized the last sentence. The meaning was obvious. A threat. I looked at him for a moment. Then I almost laughed. Mr. Lee can arrange whatever he wants. I stepped back. At worst, I'll find another job. I turned around, took out my keys, and opened the door to apartment 701 up behind me. Lija's expression darkened. The door closed between us. Bang. The old metal door shut behind me. The noisy outside world disappeared. I leaned against the cold door and slowly slid down onto the floor. My tiny rental room was unbearably hot. Because of the afternoon sun hitting the window directly, it felt like sitting inside a furnace. So this was reality. Why? Why could some people stand above everyone else and casually decide another person's future? Why did one mistake, one accidental glance, mean I could lose my job? Because I was poor? Damn it. I slammed my fist onto the concrete floor. The skin on my knuckles split, and a trace of blood appeared. But I didn't feel the pain. The helplessness was much worse that in this cold city. I was nothing but a speck of dust. Someone with money and power only needed to move a finger, and people like me could be crushed completely. Was I supposed to accept it? No, I refused. But what could I actually do? Just as my anger and despair were slowly swallowing me, a cold mechanical voice suddenly sounded inside my mind. Ding! Detected strong unwillingness and survival instinct from host. Binding requirements fulfilled. Apocalypse sign-in system activating. I froze. Activation complete. This system exists to assist the host in surviving an apocalyptic environment. Apocalypse warning. In 24 hours, Blue Star will be struck by an unknown extreme cold wave. The world will enter the frozen winter apocalypse era. Global temperatures will rapidly fall below -50 degrees Celsius and remain there, accompanied by extreme blizzards. Host, prepare immediately. I slowly raised my head. My eyes widened. A system, an apocalypse. I grabbed my leg and pinched hard. The pain was real. This wasn't a dream that the host may sign in once every day. 4 rewards will refresh randomly. The host may choose only 1 reward. Daily sign-in available. Begin sign-in now. A transparent blue screen appeared in front of me. 4 options appeared. 1. Receive various daily supplies at a fixed time every day, including food, drinking water, and essential items. 2. Obtain 1 bottle of physical enhancement potion. Slightly improves overall physical ability. 3. Obtain unlimited energy blocks. Compatible with most civilian appliances and provides permanent energy supply. 4. Obtain an endless box of toothpicks. After removing 1, the box automatically refills. Useful for cleaning your teeth during the apocalypse. I stared at the screen. My mind went blank. The system was real. The apocalypse was real. Tomorrow, everything would change. The excitement came first, then fear, then urgency. I forced myself to calm down and carefully analyze the choices. The enhancement potion was tempting. In a frozen apocalypse, stronger physical ability would definitely help survival. The unlimited energy blocks were even more attractive. With endless electricity, I could maintain heat and power during the extreme cold. Priceless. Advantage. As for the toothpicks, forget it. What kind of joke was that? When the world froze over, who cared about endless toothpicks? My eyes eventually stopped on the first option. Daily supplies, food, water, basic necessities. Those were the foundation of survival. Energy was important, strength was important, but without food and water, neither would matter. And the most important part was the word, daily. A stable, continuous supply. Nobody knew how long the apocalypse would last. A reliable source of resources was the safest choice. I clenched my teeth. Fine. I'll gamble on this. System, I choose option 1. Selection confirmed. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the daily supply system. Starting tomorrow at midnight, random daily supplies will automatically be delivered into system storage. Initial storage space, 10 cubic meters. Expansion possible as host's mental strength increases. First sign-in reward has been issued. Please check storage. The screen flashed. Option 1 remained highlighted. The others disappeared at the same time. I felt a strange connection forming in my mind at a hidden space. About 10 cubic meters. Inside it were only a few things, several packs of compressed biscuits, a few bottles of water, a few bars of chocolate. Not much, but it represented something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sunset painted the city gold. Cars moved through the streets. Neon lights began to appear. Everything looked normal, peaceful, almost beautiful. Nobody knew that 24 hours later, this city would become a frozen hell. My eyes slowly shifted toward the closed door next door. You man, you thought you were above everyone else. You thought you could decide my fate. A cold smile appeared on my face. Just wait. Tomorrow, the world will be different. And when we meet again, I really wanted to see the expressions on the faces of that so-called elite couple. I barely slept that night. My dreams kept shifting. One moment, I saw Sue Man's cold expression and the way she looked down on me. The next, I saw Elijah's emotionless eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses as he threatened to ruin my job. Then everything disappeared beneath endless snow and ice, swallowing me completely. I suddenly sat up. My heart was pounding. Outside the window, the sky was still dark. The world was silent. No, not silent. I focused and listened. There was a faint sound. A constant, dense rustling. Like countless grains of sand hitting the glass. I pushed away the thin blanket. The moment I moved, A wave of cold surrounded me that it was far colder than normal. I shivered. I hurried to the window and pulled back a corner of the old yellow curtain. My entire body froze. The outside world had turned white. Not ordinary snowfall, but a blizzard. Huge snowflakes poured down from the gray sky like endless cotton tearing apart, so dense that I could barely see the buildings across from mine. In only one night. The flower beds, cars, and roads below had all disappeared beneath a thick layer of snow. And it was still getting deeper. The wind screamed outside, dragging snow across the ground and creating a sound that felt almost like something crying in the darkness. That I grabbed my phone from beside the pillow. 5:47 a.m. I stared at the time. Then I remembered yesterday. The temperature had still been over 30 degrees during the day. Even before sleeping, my room had felt stuffy. But now, I carefully placed my finger against the glass. A bone-chilling cold instantly spread through my fingertip. The window was already covered in thick patterns of ice. "It's here." My voice was barely a whisper. It really happened. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. That I had known this was coming. But knowing something would happen and actually seeing it were completely different things. That I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. Then I quickly put on my thickest winter jacket, found an old wool hat, and warmed my stiff hands with my breath. The first thing I did afterward was connect my consciousness to the system space. Inside were still the supplies from yesterday. Several packs of compressed biscuits, a few bottles of water, some chocolate. It wasn't much, but it gave me something I desperately needed, a sense of security. Originally, I had planned to go outside and buy supplies after receiving the system, but the system had warned me that the world's transformation had already begun. Going outside now carried unknown risks. Besides, I could sign in every day. I wasn't completely helpless. Daily sign-in available. Begin sign-in now. The cold mechanical voice sounded in my mind. The blue screen appeared again. 4 new options appeared. 1. Multifunction wilderness survival knife. Made from high-strength alloy. Includes compass, fire starter, and other survival functions. 2. Portable high-efficiency heater. Requires no external energy source. Provides continuous heat and can maintain an area within 3 meters at 25 degrees Celsius. 3. Anti-gravity hoverboard. Beginner model. 1 hour operation time. Maximum height, 1 meter above ground. 4. Endless cigarette pack. Smoking is harmful to health, but in an apocalypse it may be useful for trading supplies. My eyes quickly moved across the choices. The survival knife was practical. In an apocalypse, a reliable tool and weapon could be extremely valuable. The hoverboard sounded futuristic, but with snow already reaching knee depth and possibly becoming even deeper, 1 hour of use didn't seem very useful, and it would attract too much attention. The cigarettes. No, completely useless. My attention locked onto the second option. A portable heater. No external energy required. Temperature control. A 3 meter. Warm zone. Right now, the outside temperature had to already be below 0. And it was still dropping. What about electricity? Water. How long would normal systems last? This heater was exactly what I needed. A small island of warmth in a world that was rapidly becoming frozen. Choose option 2. I didn't hesitate. Selection confirmed. Congratulations, host. You have obtained a portable high-efficiency heater, stored in system space and available at any time. The blue screen disappeared. I immediately entered the system space with my consciousness. Sure enough, beside the food supplies was a new object. A small silver metal device, roughly the size of my palm. Its design resembled a compact speaker. I brought it out with a thought. It felt slightly heavy in my hand. The surface was cold and smooth. There was only one button and a small temperature display. Following the instructions provided by the system, I pressed the switch. Beep. The screen lit up. Current. Temperature, 7 degrees C. Then warm air slowly flowed from the heater. Something unbelievable happened. The cold around me began disappearing. It was as if an invisible barrier formed around the device. A warm area, roughly 3 meters wide, surrounded me. The numbers on the display continued rising. 0.8 degrees, 0.10 degrees, 0.15 degrees. Eventually, 25 degrees. I stood inside that warm space, feeling my fingers and toes slowly regain their movement. For the first time since waking up, I almost wanted to cry. I placed the heater carefully in the center of the room, making sure my bed and a small activity area were covered. Then I returned to the window. The snow was heavier, the wind was stronger, The entire world seemed to have been swallowed by endless ice. Only the roar of the wind and the sound of falling snow remained. The sky was still dark. There was no sign of morning. Then suddenly, the phone charging beside my bed started vibrating violently. Messages flooded the screen. I picked it up, unlocked it, and opened the Sunshine Garden Happy Neighborhood group chat. The group was exploding. Aunt Zhang, 701. My goodness. Is this snow or cotton falling from the sky? I've lived this long and never seen anything like it. I can't even open my windows. Xiao Wang, 502. Does anyone have extra food? I just moved here yesterday. I only have a few instant noodles. This snow doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. Grandma Li, 303. The heating doesn't seem to be working. The pipes are freezing cold. Where's the property management? Property manager Chen, everyone stay calm. We've received notice that this is extreme weather. Heating systems across the city may have problems, and electricity repairs are underway. Please remain indoors and avoid going outside. Manager Zhao, 1102. What is going on? I have an important meeting at 9. What are the city workers doing? Clear the roads immediately. Mom from 602. My baby woke up crying from the cold. The air conditioner isn't producing heat anymore. What should I do? The group had become chaos, fear, complaints, requests for help, and people like Manager Zhao, who still thought this was just an inconvenience. Nobody understood. This wasn't a normal cold wave. This was the apocalypse. The foundations of modern civilization, electricity, water, heating, all the systems people depended on, were beginning to collapse under this impossible storm. I silently watched the messages. I didn't say anything. Some people posted pictures of their remaining food. A few wilted vegetables, half a piece of meat. Others complained about weaker phone signals. Then someone mentioned apartment 702.my neighbors. Elijah and Su Man Lu, 801 at 702 Lija. Su Man, your company has connections. Do you have any inside information? What is happening? How long until things recover? After a long while, Lija finally replied. His words still carried the confidence of someone used to controlling situations. But if I paid attention, I could sense a trace of hidden anxiety. Lija, 702. Everyone stay calm. I asked a few friends. Apparently, this is caused by unusual solar activity and extreme global atmospheric changes. The affected area is very large. The government has already activated emergency plans. I believe things will be under control soon. Everyone should stock up on supplies and wait for rescue. Immediately, people began replying. Li really knows what he's doing. Thank you for the information. With Li here, we're safe. I looked at the screen. A faint cold smile appeared. Solar activity? Extreme weather? Lija was still trying to explain this disaster using the old world's rules. He had no idea, and he would never believe, that the rescue he was waiting for might never come. I closed the chat. The noise no longer mattered. I walked back to the window. Through the ice-covered glass, I could vaguely see shadows moving behind some windows in the opposite buildings. Everyone was panicking. Everyone was trying to contact the outside world. The world was rapidly falling from modern civilization into a frozen abyss. And here I was, Lin Fei, the delivery worker they had looked down on yesterday. The man Lija threatened to destroy. In this frozen city, I had a small warm shelter, and a system that could provide supplies continuously. I placed my hand against the icy glass. On one side was a frozen world. On the other was my small area of warmth. Behind me, the heater quietly released heat, like a loyal guardian. The snow continued falling as if it would never stop. My eyes slowly became calm and cold. The first day of the apocalypse had begun. Day 5 of the blizzard. The world outside my window had completely transformed into a frozen wasteland. White. Endless white. Everything was buried beneath thick layers of snow. The snowfall had slowed slightly, and the wind was no longer as violent as it had been on the first day. But the cold, that bone-freezing cold, still seeped into every crack and corner. I yawned and climbed out of my warm bed. The room temperature remained fixed at a comfortable 25 degrees. The silver portable heater from the system was still working quietly, faithfully providing warmth without making a sound. Barefoot, I stepped onto the thick carpet I had received from a previous sign-in reward and walked toward the window. A thick layer of frost covered the glass. I wiped it with my finger, clearing a small opening. Outside, nothing moved. The balconies and windows of the nearby buildings were mostly blocked by snow. I couldn't see a single person. Only the sound of the wind passing through the frozen city. A low, eerie howl, like something crying in the darkness. 5 days that it had already been 5 days. The water and electricity completely failed 3 days ago. The power would occasionally struggle back for a few minutes, flicker, weakly, and then disappear into darkness again. The neighborhood group chat had long since changed. At first, people complained. Now they were afraid, desperate, but I didn't check the messages immediately. The first thing I did every morning was sign in. The blue system screen appeared right on time. Daily sign-in available. Begin sign-in now. For options appeared. 1. Polar cold weather survival suit. Effective insulation down to -100 degrees Celsius. 2. Multifunction refrigerator. Maintains food freshness under extreme temperatures. 3. Premium A5 Wagyu steak, 500 grams. Includes black pepper sauce and rock salt. 4. An unbreakable pair of indoor slippers. Never wears out. I glanced at the options, then immediately selected number 3. I didn't need extra cold protection. I already had warmth. And with temperatures outside around -50 degrees, a refrigerator was meaningless. But that A5 Wagyu steak, after several days of compressed biscuits and survival meals, it was impossible to resist. Choose option 3. The system flashed. At a moment later, a beautifully marbled thick-cut steak appeared inside my storage space, along with 2 small containers of seasoning. I smiled and took it out. The cold surface of the meat made me feel strangely refreshed. I hummed quietly as I walked to the corner of the room. That was where I had placed another system reward. A compact multifunction outdoor energy stove. I turned it on. A steady blue flame appeared. I placed a pan over it, added a little oil, and carefully put the Wagyu steak inside. Sizzle. The sound was beautiful. The rich aroma of meat and fat instantly filled the room. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For a moment, I almost forgot I was living through the apocalypse. I flipped the steak carefully. The surface developed a perfect seared crust. I added freshly ground black pepper and rock salt. The juices stayed locked inside. The smell became even more irresistible. While I was preparing what felt like a luxury feast in the middle of the apocalypse, the situation next door was completely different. Inside apartment 702, Elijah and Sue Mann were wrapped in every thick piece of clothing they could find. They sat together on the sofa. The curtains were tightly closed. But the cold still slipped inside. The air conditioner had become useless decoration. The temperature inside the apartment had probably already fallen below zero. Their faces were pale. Their lips were cracked. On the coffee table were 2 empty instant noodle containers. Even the leftover soup had frozen into a layer of white grease. Honey, Sue Mann's voice trembled. I'm so hungry. The confidence and beauty she once had were gone. Only fear and exhaustion remained. We finished the noodles yesterday. That was the last package. Elijah's face was stiff. His gold-rimmed glasses sat crookedly on his face, and his eyes were filled with red veins. He tried to stay calm, but his trembling hands betrayed him. Don't panic. His voice was hoarse. The government, they'll definitely come rescue us. It's only a matter of time. Even he didn't believe his own words anymore. His phone had already died. The last time it had turned on, the neighborhood group was full of panic. Some people were even burning furniture for heat. One person almost choked himself with smoke. Rescue? There had been no sign of it. I can't take this anymore. Sue Mann suddenly stood, but her weakened body immediately swayed from the cold. I'm going outside. Maybe the store downstairs still has food. Or maybe we'll find rescuers. Elijah had no better idea. There was nothing left in their apartment, not even crumbs. Water was an even bigger problem. The small amount they had collected earlier was almost gone. Fine. We'll check the situation outside. He gritted his teeth and stood. Supporting each other, they slowly moved toward the entrance. The heavy security door was freezing cold. Elijah took a deep breath. Then he unlocked it. The moment he opened the door slightly, a wave of freezing air rushed inside. Far colder than the apartment, it carried tiny pieces of ice that hit their faces. Both of them immediately started coughing. The hallway outside was dark and frozen. Snow blocked most of the windows. Only a faint white light entered. The temperature was definitely below -20 degrees. They were about to close the door. Then, a smell suddenly appeared. Rich, hot, Impossible to ignore that a powerful aroma of roasted meat slipped through the crack of the old metal door next door. Apartment 701. That the smell hit them like a physical blow. Meat. Real meat. That high-quality meat being cooked, mixed with black pepper, mixed with the rich aroma of oil. After 5 days of hunger, cold, and despair, that smell was almost overwhelming to Elijah and Sue Man. Froze. Both of them stared at the closed door of 701, the apartment they had always associated with poverty. With someone beneath them, Sue Man swallowed unconsciously. The sound was obvious. Her eyes widened. Shock, disbelief, and a hunger she could barely control. Elijah's expression changed completely. 701. That delivery worker? How was he? Cooking steak, and not just ordinary food. This smell. He had eaten at many expensive restaurants, but this aroma was stronger than anything he remembered. How was this possible? The electricity was gone. The water was gone. The world had frozen, and yet that delivery worker was enjoying a luxury meal? Why? A hallucination? Impossible. The smell was too real, too powerful. Sue Man suddenly grabbed Lija's arm. Her fingers tightened. Do you smell it? It's meat. It's actually meat. So fragrant. Where did he get it? Lija didn't answer. He only stared at the door to ask if he could see through it. The color slowly drained from his face. Shock, jealousy, confusion, and beneath it all, a trace of fear. The hallway was filled with two completely different worlds. Behind the door of 701, warmth, comfort. A luxury meal cooking peacefully. Outside apartment 702, a starving couple standing in the freezing cold. Separated by only one wall, yet separated by a distance they could no longer cross. On the fifth day of the apocalypse, the old social hierarchy was being rewritten, and it was happening in the cruelest way possible. A knock came at the door. It wasn't loud, but in the silent hallway, it sounded unusually clear. There was hesitation behind it, and desperation. I had just finished the last bite of the Wagyu steak. The meat was tender and full of flavor. I chewed slowly, enjoying every second. When I heard the knocking, I paused. Then a faint smile appeared on my face. I wiped my mouth with a napkin and stood up. I didn't open the door immediately. Instead, I walked over and looked through the peephole. Just as I expected, Elijah and Sue Man, the two people standing outside, looked nothing like they had 5 days ago. Their faces were pale from the cold. Their lips were cracked. Their hair was messy. They had wrapped themselves in every layer of clothing they could find, but it clearly wasn't enough. Their bodies were still trembling. The arrogant, polished couple from before was gone. Sue Man stared at my door with desperate eyes. If she could see through it and reach the source of the smell inside, Elijah looked completely different from the confident man I remembered. There was still a trace of pride on his face, but it was mixed with disbelief, embarrassment, and panic. I watched them through the peephole. I felt no sympathy, only a cold sense of satisfaction. 5 days ago, he had threatened to destroy my job. Now he was standing outside my door, needing me. I reached into the system space and took out the high-tech single-shot crossbow I had received from a previous sign-in reward. It was matte black, with a sleek design that looked far beyond ordinary technology. The weight in my hand felt reassuring. The arrow was already loaded. According to the system, it had enough power to penetrate thin metal at close range. I held it down by my side. With my other hand, I picked up the ceramic plate from the table. A little black pepper sauce remained on it. Then I unlocked the door. Click. I pulled it open. The moment the door opened, warm air rushed out. Dry, comfortable, carrying the rich smell of meat. The warmth hit Lija and Sue Man like a wave. Both of them shuddered. Their eyes widened. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. I was standing there wearing only a clean short-sleeved shirt. My face looked normal, relaxed, the exact opposite of someone struggling through the apocalypse. The plate in my hand still carried the remains of the meal, the sauce, the traces of meat, the smell that had tortured them in the hallway. Behind me was an entirely different world, warmth, comfort. A room that felt like spring. Outside was a frozen wasteland. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Elijah's glasses, immediately fogged from the temperature difference, he raised his hand instinctively to wipe them, then stopped halfway. His entire understanding of reality had been shaken. The electricity was gone. The water was gone. The outside world was frozen. Oh, how was I living like this? How? Sue Man stared at the plate. Her breathing became heavier. The hunger in her eyes was impossible to hide that I looked at them calmly. Something wrong. My voice was relaxed, almost casual that I looked between the two of them. Then my eyes settled on Li Jia. He flinched. The humiliation hit him immediately, but when he looked at the empty plate in my hand and felt the warmth coming from inside my apartment, his pride was crushed by survival instinct. He swallowed. His dry lips moved. Lin? Lin Fei. His voice was rough, different from the confident tone he used before. Brother Lin. Su Man quickly stepped forward. She forced a smile onto her frozen face. Lin Fei, we're neighbors. We just came over to check on you. I raised an eyebrow. Check on me? I lifted the empty plate slightly. Check on what I was eating? My words landed like a slap. Elijah's face turned red, then quickly became pale again from the cold. Su Man's forced smile froze. No, that's not what we mean. Li Jia lowered his posture even further. Lin Fei, we really have no choice. There's no food left at home. The water is almost gone too. He looked at my short sleeves, then at the warmth behind me. His eyes were filled with disbelief and desire. You seem to be doing better than us. He hesitated, then finally said what they had come for. Can you lend us some food? Or even some water? When rescue arrives, we'll repay you. 10 times. No, 100 times. 100 times. Su Man immediately nodded. Please. We're neighbors. Everyone should help each other. Please help us. She tried to step closer. That was when I raised my right hand. The crossbow became visible. The black weapon reflected the dim hallway light. The sharp arrowhead gave off a cold glint. Both of them froze. Their expressions changed instantly. Fear replaced desperation. They looked at the strange weapon, then at my calm face. That a chill ran through them. Not from the weather, from me. Lend? I lightly adjusted my grip on the crossbow, then looked at Li Jia. Mr. Li, did you forget something? His expression changed. 5 days ago. Right here. What did you say to me? My voice wasn't loud, but every word hit harder than the cold outside. You said you would contact my manager. You said you would arrange things for me. You said a delivery worker like me had no right to look at your wife. Their faces grew paler with every sentence. The words they had thrown at me when they were powerful had returned to them now. Now, I took one step forward. You're freezing. You're starving. And you came to me, the person you looked down on, to ask for food? I shook my head. Leave. One word. Cold. Simple. Final. Elijah and Su Man stood frozen. Shock, fear, shame, despair. All of it showed on their faces. Behind my door was warmth, food, safety. Outside was the frozen apocalypse, and a neighbor who no longer owed them anything. That I turned away. That I didn't give them another look. Then, bang, the heavy metal door closed, separating two worlds again. Outside, the hallway became silent. Only their desperate breathing remained, and the lingering smell of the meal they could no longer reach. The sound of the metal door closing echoed through the hallway. Elijah and Su Man stood frozen. For a moment, they looked like they had been turned into ice statues. The desperation on their faces hadn't even disappeared. It had only been replaced by something worse. Hopelessness. That door hadn't just closed off warmth and food. It had closed off their last chance to survive. That Su Man's legs weakened. She almost collapsed. Elijah quickly grabbed her arm, but his own hands were shaking. Cold, they terrifying cold. The hallway felt even colder now. The warmth that had escaped from Lin Fei's apartment for those few seconds felt almost cruel. That IT had shown them exactly what they were missing. The smell of meat still lingered in the AI. IT tortured their empty stomachs. Both of them had the same thought. They were finished. Then, click, the lock moved again. The door that had just closed slowly opened once more. Lin Fei appeared behind the gap. His expression was calm. The empty plate was gone, but the black crossbow was still casually held in his hand. Elijah and Su Man immediately looked up. That a tiny spark of hope appeared in their lifeless eyes. After thinking about it, Lin Fei's voice remained calm. Since we're neighbors, completely ignoring someone in danger doesn't feel right. Their hearts started racing. They held their breath, borrowing supplies as possible. Then his tone changed slightly. His eyes moved towards Su Man. She instinctively stepped behind Li Jia. But Lin Fei continued. I don't like giving things away for free. My apartment could use some cleaning. He glanced at Su Man. You can do the work. Every day, from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. Clean my place. He paused. Work one day, and I'll give you 1 day's worth of food and water. A fair exchange. The hallway became silent. Only the wind outside could be heard. Elijah's face slowly changed, first pale, then red. His veins stood out on his forehead. Anger, humiliation, a complete rejection of reality. His wife, working as a cleaner for Lin Fei, the man he had looked down on 5 days ago, a delivery worker for 12 hours every day? This was worse than being refused. Much worse. You're dreaming. The words came out through Lijia's clenched teeth. His voice trembled with rage. Su Man, we're leaving. Even if we starve, even if we freeze to death, I won't let you suffer this kind of humiliation. He grabbed her arm and pulled her away. The two of them stumbled back toward apartment 702. Bang. The security door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the frozen hallway. Even louder than before. I stood there for a moment after they left. Then I smiled slightly. Not because I was surprised that I already knew what would happen. In a world where survival was uncertain, how much was pride really worth? I closed my own door. The warmth of my apartment surrounded me again. Inside apartment 702, the situation was completely different. The room was dark, cold, silent. The moment the door closed, the strength Lija had been forcing himself to maintain disappeared. He leaned against the door and breathed heavily as Su Man sat on the floor. She hugged her knees and buried her face. Her shoulders trembled, whether from cold or fear, neither of them knew. The despair returned, stronger than before, because this time they had rejected the only chance they might have had, with their own hands, and all they had left was anger. Bastard. Who does he think he is? Lija punched the door. Pain shot through his hand, but it meant nothing compared to the humiliation burning inside him. Su Man didn't raise her head. Lija, what are we going to do? He had no answer. He looked around the apartment, the place that had once represented success, comfort, status. Now it was nothing more than a decorated freezer, a coffin waiting for them. The cold entered everywhere. The hunger in his stomach tightened like an invisible hand. Time passed, minute by minute. Every second pushed them closer to the edge. After an unknown amount of time, Lija's breathing finally slowed. Not because he had calmed down, because something inside him was beginning to disappear. He slowly sat beside Su Man. Weak light reflected from the snow outside, revealing her frozen face and trembling body. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His throat was painfully dry. He licked his cracked lips. The taste of blood filled his mouth. Man. His voice was rough. Su Man didn't move. Elijah lowered his head. We might not last much longer. Her body trembled. He still didn't dare look at her. His voice became quieter. There's something about Lin Fei. He may be difficult to deal with. But what he said, maybe he's not completely wrong. Su Man suddenly looked up. She stared at him. Shock filled her eyes. And something else, something colder, something unfamiliar. Elijah felt uncomfortable under her gaze. But he continued. It's just cleaning. Right. Just cleaning. There's nothing wrong with that. Man. Right now, surviving is more important than anything else. If we get food and water, we can stay alive. When rescue comes, everything will go back to normal. He stopped, because he saw her expression. Su Man was looking at him like she was seeing him for the first time. This was the man who had always been confident, the man who had always acted like he controlled everything. Now he was using a trembling voice to convince her to work for someone they had once looked down on. All for a little food, a little water. Su Man said nothing. She only stared at him. And the longer she looked, the harder it became for Lija to continue. Eventually, he looked away. The room fell silent again. Only their heavy breathing remained, even quieter than the blizzard outside, and somehow, much more suffocating. Time dragged on. Cold and hunger stretched every second into something unbearable. Su Man curled up in the corner of the sofa. She was wrapped in a thick down jacket, but it did nothing. The cold had already reached her bones. Her stomach cramped from hunger. Her throat was dry. Her cracked lips had started bleeding. She didn't dare move. She didn't dare think, because moving meant wasting the last bit of strength she had left, and thinking meant letting despair completely consume her. Her mind was a blur. Again and again, she remembered the warmth behind Lin Fei's door, the smell of the food, the impossible comfort inside apartment 701. Then she remembered Lijia's words, his suggestion, the way he had tried to convince her to work for Lin Fei. Those memories felt like cold needles stabbing into her heart. Was this really the man she had married, when their lives were on the line? He had immediately considered pushing her forward. Her heart felt colder than the room around her. Beside her, Lija sat on the floor with his back against the sofa. His head was lowered. The darkness hid his expression. Only his heavy, uneven breathing could be heard. He said nothing. The silence between them felt heavier than the cold. Time passed. Minutes. Hours. She couldn't tell anymore. Then Su Man heard something beside her, a suppressed sound, almost like someone crying. She turned slightly. Elijah's shoulders were shaking. His head was buried between his knees. The man who had always acted confident, the man who believed he could control everything, had finally broken under hunger, cold, and feared. Su Man watched him. The anger inside her slowly disappeared, leaving only emptiness. Slowly, very slowly, she stood up. Her movements were stiff, like a puppet with frozen strings. The sound of her jacket rubbing filled the silent room. Elijah suddenly raised his head. His face was covered with tears. He looked at her in shock. Su Man didn't look at him. Her eyes moved toward the security door, the door leading to the frozen hallway, the door leading to the only possible chance they had left. Her lips moved. Her voice was quiet, empty. Okay, I'll go. After saying those words, Su Man felt whatever strength remained inside her disappear, but she still walked forward, one step at a time. Elijah opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, anything, but no words came out. He could only watch as his wife opened the freezing door. The hallway was colder than she remembered. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself. Her body trembled uncontrollably. Then she reached apartment 701, the old metal door that now represented the difference between life and death. She raised her hand, paused. Her fingers trembled in the cold air. Then finally, knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through the silent hallway, heavy, resigned, the sound of someone who had run out of choices. A moment later, footsteps came from inside. Click. The door opened. I stood behind it. I was still wearing only a short-sleeved shirt. Warm air flowed past me into the hallway. Su Man stood there, different from the woman who had looked down on me 5 days ago. She looked exhausted, frightened, lost. I studied her expression for a moment. Then I asked, "Have you made your decision?" Su Man lowered her head. She bit her dry lips. After a few seconds, she answered softly, "Yes." I stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated, then walked across the doorway. The moment she entered, warmth surrounded her. Real warmth, dry, comfortable, almost unreal. After days trapped in freezing temperatures, the feeling was overwhelming. Her frozen body slowly began to relax. She looked up, then froze. This was my apartment, the small, old room of the delivery worker she had looked down on. The place was clean, organized, comfortable. The temperature inside was completely different from the frozen world outside. The bed was covered with clean blankets. A thick carpet covered the floor. On the table were clean cups and plates. The kettle sat there, releasing a faint stream of steam. Several boxes were stacked neatly in the corner, and then she saw the source of the warmth. The silver heater quietly operating nearby. That small device had created a pocket of spring inside a world of ice. There was no darkness, no freezing silence, no hopelessness. It felt like a normal home, almost peaceful. Compared with her own apartment, compared with the frozen nightmare outside, the difference was brutal. Su Man stood there silently, shock, disbelief, and an emotion she didn't want to admit. Envy. How had I done this? I closed the door behind her, cutting off the last trace of cold air. Then I walked to the table and poured myself a cup of hot water. Steam rose between us. I looked at Su Man, still standing there in shock. "Don't just stand there." I took a sip. My voice was calm, but firm. "Start cleaning. From now on." Time moved slowly in the cold and hunger. Every second felt unbearable. Su Man remained curled up in the corner of the sofa, even wrapped in a thick jacket. She couldn't feel any warmth. The cold had already settled deep into her body. Her stomach cramped from hunger. Her throat was painfully dry. Her cracked lips had split in several places. She didn't dare move. She didn't dare think too much. Because any movement wasted energy, and any thought brought the despair crashing back. Her mind kept drifting. Between two scenes, the warmth inside Lin Fei's apartment, the smell of real food, and Lijia's words, the way he had tried to convince her to work for Lin Fei. Those memories hurt more than the cold. Was this really the man she married? When their lives were at risk, he had immediately considered sacrificing her. Her heart felt colder than the room itself. Beside her, Lija sat on the floor with his back against the sofa. His head remained lowered. The darkness hid his expression, only his rough breathing filled the room. He didn't speak anymore. The silence between them felt heavier than the cold. She didn't know how long passed. Maybe hours. Maybe only minutes. Then she heard something beside her, a suppressed sound. Almost a sob. She turned her head slightly. Elijah's shoulders were shaking. His face was buried against his knees. The man who had always believed he was successful. The man who always acted like he controlled everything had finally collapsed. Hunger, cold, fear, they had broken through. Everything he had used to hold himself together. Su Man looked at him. The anger inside her slowly faded, leaving only emptiness. Slowly, she stood up. Her movements were stiff, like a person moving without feeling. Elijah suddenly looked up. His face was covered in tears. He stared at her. Su Man didn't look at him. Her eyes moved toward the security door. The door leading to apartment 701, the door leading to warmth. Her lips moved. Her voice was quiet. Okay, I'll go. After saying those words, she felt the last bit of strength leave her body, but she still walked forward, step by step. Elijah opened his mouth. He wanted to stop her, but no words came out. He could only watch as she opened the freezing door. The hallway outside was even colder than before. Su Man wrapped her jacket tighter around herself. Her body trembled as she walked. Then she stopped in front of apartment 701. The old metal door now represented the difference between survival and death. She raised her hand, paused, then knocked. Knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through the silent hallway. Heavy, resigned. A moment later, footsteps came from inside. Click. The door opened. Lin Fei stood behind it. He was still wearing only a thin short-sleeved shirt. His expression was calm. Have you decided? Su Man lowered her head. She forced the answer out. Yes. Lin Fei stepped aside. Come in. She hesitated, then crossed the doorway. The moment she entered, warmth surrounded her. Real warmth. Dry air. Comfort. After spending days trapped in freezing temperatures, the feeling was almost overwhelming. Her frozen fingers slowly regained sensation. Her stiff body began to relax. She looked around, then froze. This was apartment 701. The small, old rental room of the delivery worker she had once looked down on. The room was clean, organized, comfortable. A thick carpet covered the floor. The bed was neatly arranged. A kettle on the table released a small stream of steam. Several sealed boxes were stacked neatly in the corner, and the source of the warmth, a small silver heater quietly working. Nearby, that little device had created an impossible warm shelter inside the frozen world. There was no darkness, no cold silence, no feeling of waiting for death. It felt like a normal home. Compared with apartment 702, compared with the frozen world outside, the difference was impossible to ignore. The Su Man stood there silently. Shock, disbelief, and an emotion she didn't want to admit. Envy. How had Lin Fei managed this? Lin Fei closed the door, shutting out the cold hallway. Then he walked to the table and poured himself a cup of hot water. Steam rose into the air. That he looked at Su Man, who was still standing there. Don't just stand there. He took a sip. His voice was calm. Start cleaning. From now on. Su Man was still trying to adjust to the warmth when Lin Fei walked over. He looked at the thick winter clothing she was wearing. You can take that off. It will only make working harder. Su Man immediately became tense. She looked at him cautiously. Lin Fei frowned. What? You're here to work. Do you plan to clean the room, wearing all those layers? She looked around the clean apartment, then at her dirty, snow-covered clothes. She understood. Slowly, she removed the heavy outer jacket. She didn't dare say anything. Lin Fei didn't push further. Instead, he reached into his system space. The neatly folded set of clothing appeared in his hand. Su Man stared. She had seen enough impossible things these past few days to know something strange was happening. But seeing objects appear from nowhere still shocked her. Lin Fei handed the clothes to her. Change into this. She unfolded them that a black and white maid-style uniform. Her expression changed. Humiliation and anger flashed across her face. Are you serious? Lin Fei looked at her calmly. If you don't want to wear it, you can leave. He pointed toward the door. You can go back to the cold apartment. Back to waiting for hunger and freezing temperatures. Su Man froze. She remembered the darkness of 702, the empty stomach, the freezing nights, Elijah breaking down. Her raised hand slowly lowered. She gripped the clothing tightly. Her pride fought against survival instinct. But survival won. After a long silence, she turned away and changed. When she finished, she stood quietly. She still looked uncomfortable, still embarrassed, but she had made her choice. Lin Fei looked at her briefly. Not bad. The simple comment made her feel strangely uncomfortable. Then he walked closer. Listen carefully. My rules are simple. First, inside this apartment, you follow my instructions. No arguing. No unnecessary questions. Second, you work 12 hours every day. From 8 in the morning until 8 at night. No arriving late. No leaving early. Third, keep quiet. Unless there is a reason, don't make unnecessary noise. He looked around the apartment. Your job is to keep this place clean. Floor, tables, supplies, everything. Not a single place should be neglected. He paused. If you do this, you and Li Zhu will receive 1 day's worth of food and water. Enough to survive. Understood. Su Man clenched her fists. Her nails dug into her palm. After several seconds, she lowered her head. Using all the strength she had left, she answered quietly. Yes. Su Man was still trying to process everything around her. The warmth, the clean room, the impossible reality of standing inside a place untouched by the frozen world outside. Her body slowly absorbed the heat, and the numbness in her fingers and toes began to fade. I put down my cup and looked at her. The heavy winter clothes she was wearing were dirty from the snow and the long journey through the cold. They'll only get in the way. My voice was calm. You're here to work. You can't clean properly wearing all that. Su Man immediately became tense. She looked at me with caution. After a moment, she slowly removed her thick outer jacket. I didn't say anything else. Then I reached into my storage space. The neatly folded set of clothes appeared in my hand. Su Man's eyes widened. Even after seeing the heater and the supplies, she still couldn't completely hide her shock at things appearing from nowhere. I handed the clothes to her. Change into this. She unfolded them. It was a simple black and white work uniform, a maid-style outfit. Her expression changed. For a moment, anger and embarrassment appeared on her face. She stopped herself. She knew why I had given it to her. She was no longer the neighbor who could look down on me from a distance. She was someone trying to survive in a world where everything had changed. I looked at her calmly. If you don't want to wear it, you can leave. I pointed toward the door. Go back to your apartment. Go back to the cold. Your choice. Su Man stood there silently. She remembered the frozen darkness of 702, the empty stomach, the endless cold, the fear of not waking up the next day. Slowly, her anger faded. Survival won. She turned away and changed. A few moments later, she stood quietly in the room. She still looked uncomfortable, still unfamiliar with the situation, but she had accepted the agreement. I nodded slightly. Good. Then I continued. Listen carefully. My rules are simple. First, in this apartment, follow my instructions. No arguing. No refusing without a reason. Second, you work 12 hours every day. From 8 in the morning until 8 at night. No being late. No leaving early. Third, keep this place clean. Everything. The floor. The table. The supplies. Every corner. This is your responsibility. I looked at her. If you complete your work, you and Li Zhu will receive food and water. Enough to survive another day. Understood. Su Man lowered her head. Her hands tightened. After several seconds, she answered quietly. Yes. Once the rules were clear, I took out some basic supplies. A small bottle of water. A pack of compressed biscuits. I placed them in front of her. She froze. After 5 days of hunger, even simple survival food looked precious. Eat. She looked at me briefly, then picked up the bottle. The first sip of water seemed to bring life back into her. She ate slowly at first, then faster. Not because she had forgotten manners, because her body was demanding energy. I watched silently. The world outside had changed everyone. The people who once worried about status, appearance, and pride were now fighting for the next meal. That was the reality of the apocalypse. Remember, I leaned back. Here, obedience keeps you alive. There is warmth. There is food. There is water. Everything is an exchange. Sue Man slowed down. She understood. This was no longer the old world, and no one could survive by relying on pride. After finishing the food, she stood up. Start working. I pointed toward the floor. Begin there. She nodded, then picked up a cloth and started cleaning. Her movements were careful, not because she was used to this kind of work, because she understood the value of what she had received. A mistake here wasn't just a mistake. It could mean losing access to survival. I sat back on the sofa I had received from the system. It was far more comfortable than my old bed. For the first time in days, I could simply relax. I poured myself some water and watched the storm outside the window. The city was frozen. The old rules were gone. A few days ago, I was just a delivery worker who could be threatened by people like Li Jie. Now, I had warmth, resources. A way to survive. And the people who once stood above me were beginning to understand what the new world valued. Not money, not status, not reputation. Only survival. The world changed faster than anyone could have imagined. Or maybe, this was the real face of the apocalypse. When civilization disappeared, what remained was simple: strength, resources, survival. Before this happened, what kind of life had I lived? Waking up before sunrise, working until exhaustion, watching people's expressions, earning barely enough money to survive, living in this old, cramped apartment. But now, I had the system. A steady supply of resources. A warm shelter untouched by the frozen world outside. After everything I had endured, why shouldn't I enjoy it? I took another sip of my drink. A dark thought flashed through my mind. This was only the beginning. What I wanted wasn't just survival. I wanted controlled. Elijah next door had always valued his pride, his status, his dignity. I wondered how long those things would last when death was waiting outside. I looked toward the room. Move that box over here. I pointed toward a cardboard box in the corner. Sue Man paused. Then she quietly put down the cloth in her hand and walked over. She didn't argue. Not anymore. At the same time, deep inside the frozen darkness of the neighborhood, another kind of change was happening. The property management office had lost power days ago. The room was almost completely dark. Only a few candles provided weak, flickering light. Several distorted faces appeared around the small room. The leader was Wang Chong, the former security captain. Normally, he was the kind of person who smiled politely at residents. But now, that mask was gone. His expression was harsh. His eyes were filled with desperation. Damn this weather. He slammed his hand against the table. It's trying to kill everyone. The food at home is almost gone. The water won't last much longer either. A thin security guard beside him looked nervous. Brother Wang, what do we do? If this continues, we're all going to freeze or starve. Wang Chong's eyes hardened. Wait here and die? No, I'm not doing that. He looked around the room. The candlelight moved across his face. There are people in this building with supplies. People who had money before. People who lived comfortably. Especially those lower floor apartments. They probably stored plenty of food. A scar-faced man nearby licked his dry lips. Brother Wang, what are you suggesting? Wang Chong smiled. A cold smile. You already know. Times like this, normal rules don't matter anymore. He tapped the weapon at his side. They have food. They have warmth. And we're supposed to freeze here? Why? He looked at everyone. We stick together. We start with the easier targets. Break the doors. Take food. Take water. Take anything that helps us survive. One of the men hesitated. But isn't that illegal? What happens afterward? Afterward? Wang Chong interrupted. He stared at him. Look outside. Do you see rescue? Do you see anyone coming? The old world is gone. Right now, whoever has power makes the rules. The man fell silent. Nobody argued anymore. The hunger, the cold, the fear, they had already pushed people toward the edge. Let's do it. The scar-faced man spoke first. Yeah, we do it. The others followed. Wang Chong nodded with satisfaction. Good. Prepare everything. Tonight, we start with apartment 101. An old woman and a child. Easy target. We split whatever we get. In the candlelight, several pairs of eyes reflected greed. The frozen apocalypse had weakened the walls of civilization. and something darker was beginning to emerge that a robbery targeting the vulnerable was about to begin. But for now, none of that had reached apartment 701. Inside my warm shelter, I had other things to think about. The storm outside continued. The night became darker. Snow buried the city deeper, and behind the walls, the old world was disappearing piece by piece. Later that evening, the heater continued releasing steady warmth. I stood up and stretched. Su Man was still cleaning, but her movements had slowed. Her energy was running out. A faint sound came from her stomach. She immediately lowered her head and pretended to work harder. I noticed, but I said nothing. Instead, I walked over to the energy stove with a thought. I took today's ingredients from the system space. A beautifully marbled filet steak, fresh mushrooms, green asparagus, and a small piece of butter. The moment the butter touched the heated pan, sizzled. A rich aroma filled the room. Su Man's attention shifted despite herself. She watched quietly. The butter melted. The steak entered the pan. The smell of fresh meat spread through the apartment. After days of survival food, the scent was almost overwhelming. She tried not to look, but hunger was stronger than pride. Her stomach reminded her of the reality she was living in. Fresh meat, vegetables, buttered. In the middle of the apocalypse. How was this even possible? This wasn't survival. This was another world entirely. I continued cooking calmly. I could feel her attention from behind me. But I didn't rush. The steak slowly developed a perfect crust. The mushrooms absorbed the flavor. The asparagus remained fresh and bright. Finally, I placed everything onto a plate. The steak was perfectly cooked. The surface carried a rich sear. The inside remained tender. The vegetables were covered with the aroma of butter and meat. I carried the plate to the table. Then I sat down. I even took out a knife and fork. I didn't hurry. I slowly cut into the steak. The knife moved through the meat. Juice slowly spread across the plate. Outside was a frozen wasteland. Inside was warmth, food, safety, and a completely different set of rules. Su Man stood only a few steps away. She tried not to look, but the smell was impossible to ignore. Her throat was dry. Every swallow hurt. Her empty stomach twisted painfully. I cut off a small piece of steak and ate slowly. The taste was rich and satisfying. After days of survival food, this felt like something from another world. I looked up at Su Man. She was still wearing the work clothes I had given her. Her face was pale. Her hands were gripping the cleaning cloth tightly. She was trying to appear calm, but her eyes kept drifting toward the food. Hunger was impossible to hide. I put down the knife and fork. Want some? Su Man froze. For a moment, her pride fought against her hunger. She looked away, but her body betrayed her. After a few seconds, she gave a tiny nod. Almost impossible to notice. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. I picked up another piece of steak. Sit down. She hesitated, then slowly walked over. Not because she wanted to, because she understood the reality she was facing. The old world was gone. The rules had changed. She sat across from me. I placed the food in front of her. Eat. She stared at the steak, then at me. Slowly, she picked up the fork. The first bite seemed to shock her. Warm, tender, real food. The flavor spread through her exhausted body. For a moment, she forgot the cold, forgot the fear, forgot everything except survival. She ate carefully at first, then faster. Not because she lacked manners, because her body had been starving for days. I watched quietly. The apocalypse had changed everyone. People who once cared about status and pride now cared about one thing: staying alive. Remember? I leaned back. Here, you work. And you receive supplies. Food. Water. Warmth. It's a simple exchange. Su Man slowed down. She understood what I meant. This wasn't about kindness. It was survival. After finishing her meal, she lowered her head. The complicated emotions on her face were impossible to hide. Embarrassment, frustration, relief, all mixed together. I looked at the time, then pointed toward the remaining cleaning supplies. Continue working. She nodded quietly. Yes. The blizzard outside continued through the evening. Inside apartment 701, the heater kept the room warmed. Su Man cleaned carefully. Her movements were no longer as weak as before. The food had given her some strength back. She still looked uncomfortable, still unfamiliar with this situation, but she worked seriously because she understood the value of what she had received when the old world disappeared. Survival became the only currency. 8 o'clock arrived at a small alarm clock in the corner rang. The sound marked the end of her working hours. Su Man immediately stopped. The moment felt like permission to leave. She quickly picked up her old winter jacket and put it back on. The thick clothing covered the work outfit underneath. She avoided looking at me. I didn't stop her. I simply walked to the supply boxes. After checking the remaining supplies, I took out 2 bottles of water and 2 packs of compressed biscuits. Then I paused. I put 1 pack back. I returned with 1 pack of biscuits and 2 bottles of water. Today's payment. My voice was calmed. Su Man looked at the supplies. She noticed the amount was less than expected. Her lips moved slightly. She wanted to ask, but after a moment, she said nothing. She quietly reached out and accepted them. The agreement was clear. Work, then survive. The supplies felt cold in her hands, but that coldness reminded her of something important. At least she had survived today. Change back into your own clothes. Then you can leave. Lin Fei pointed toward the bathroom. Su Man lowered her head and quickly walked inside. The moment the door closed, she leaned against the cold tiles. Her legs gave out. She slowly slid down onto the floor. For the first time all day, she let herself break. Tears fell silently. She covered her mouth, refusing to make a sound. Outside, Lin Fei heard the faint crying, but he showed no reaction. After a while, the bathroom door opened. Su Man had changed back into her old clothes. Her eyes were red. Her hair was messy, but she kept her head lowered, hiding everything. She held the food and water tightly, like they were the only things keeping her alive. She walked toward the door without looking at Lin Fei. Her hand touched the handle. Then his voice came from behind her. Tomorrow. She stopped. Come earlier. The calm tone sounded ordinary, but to Su Man, it felt heavier than the freezing wind outside. She didn't answer. She opened the door and stepped into the cold hallway. The door of apartment 701 closed behind her. The warmth disappeared. The freezing air immediately surrounded her again. She held the supplies close and hurried toward apartment 702. At the moment the door opened, Su Man almost stumbled inside. She leaned against it and breathed heavily. Elijah immediately stood up. Man, did you get food? His voice was full of desperation. His eyes locked onto the supplies in her hands. He reached for them. Su Man instinctively pulled back. Only for a moment. But Lijah noticed. His expression changed slightly. Give them to me. I'm starving. After a pause, Su Man slowly handed over the food and water. Elijah grabbed them. When he saw there was only 1 package of biscuits, his face darkened. That's it? That's all he gave you? He complained. But his hands moved quickly. He opened the package and began eating. The hunger was too strong. He barely noticed how desperate he looked. Su Man stood silently nearby. Watching him, the room was quiet except for his chewing. After a while, Lijah's breathing slowed. The food helped him regain some control. He looked at her. Ew. You were just cleaning over there? Su Man nodded slightly. Yes. Lijah studied her. Did he make things difficult for you? She froze. The question hit harder than she expected. How could she explain? How could she describe what she had endured? The fear, the helplessness, the feeling of having no choices, just cleaning. Her voice was quiet. Elijah frowned. Only cleaning? Then why did he only give this much? Did you not do enough? Did you make him unhappy? The questions came one after another. Su Man slowly raised her head. For a moment, she wanted to shout. She wanted to tell him everything. But then she looked at him. The exhausted face, the hunger, the same man who had once promised he could protect everything, now depending on her to survive. She swallowed the words. What difference would it make? Would he confront Lin Fei? Would he refuse the supplies? No, he would only ask her to endure more, to sacrifice more. Her heart sank. I'm tired. She turned away. I need to rest. Wait. Lijah grabbed her arm. His hand was cold. His expression changed. He looked at her carefully. Then he noticed something. A smell. A trace of food. Warmth. Something impossible inside their freezing apartment. What is that smell? His voice became sharper. You smell like food. Like meat. Su Man froze. She had forgotten. She had spent 12 hours inside Lin Fei's warm apartment. The smell of cooking had stayed on her clothes, on her hair. I don't know. She tried to pull away, but Lijah's suspicion grew. You don't know? Su Man, tell me the truth. Did he give you more food? His voice rose. The hunger and fear inside him turned into anger. No, Su Man finally broke. I only brought back this. Only this. Leisha stared at her. The silence between them became painful. He wanted an explanation. But the truth was complicated, and neither of them had the strength to face it. Finally, he released her arm. Neither of them spoke. Su Man sat down near the door. She hugged her knees. Silent tears fell. I just stood there for a long time. Then he slowly sat back down. The remaining food rested between them, the thing keeping them alive, and the thing exposing how fragile their relationship had become. Outside, the blizzard continued. Inside, the cold between them grew deeper. In apartment 701, everything was different. The heater continued to provide warmth. The room remained peaceful. After dinner, I looked over the supplies I had gathered. Tomorrow would bring another sign-in, another day, another opportunity to strengthen my position. The apocalypse had only just begun. The next morning, I was awakened by the system notification. Daily sign-in available. Begin sign-in now. I was lying in bed, surrounded by the steady warmth from the heater. I focused my thoughts on the blue screen. 4 options appeared. 1. Desert Eagle handgun with unlimited ammunition and basic firearm mastery. 2. Portable water purifier. Produces 5 liters of clean water per hour. 3. A box of self-heating hot pot meals. 12 servings. 4. A cap that never sits crooked. Perhaps it improves your presence? My eyes immediately stopped on the first option. A Desert Eagle. Unlimited ammunition. In a world where society was collapsing, what could provide more security than overwhelming firepower? The crossbow I already had was useful, but if I encountered groups of desperate survivors, a firearm was far more reliable. Choose option 1. The system flashed. Inside my storage space, a silver handgun appeared. It looked powerful and heavy. Several magazines were placed neatly beside it. Although the ammunition was unlimited, the system still provided the normal loading setup. At the same time, knowledge about firearms, structure, and shooting techniques flowed into my mind. I took the Desert Eagle out. The cold metal in my hand gave me a strange sense of confidence. The last bit of uncertainty I had about the outside world disappeared. I stored the weapon away. Then I started preparing breakfast. Today's sign-in reward wasn't food. Fortunately, my supplies were still plentiful. I made 2 simple sandwiches. Bread, ham, lettuce. A little butter. I heated them on the energy stove. Soon, the smell filled the room. Then, knock. A hesitant sound came from the door. I raised an eyebrow. Already? Looks like Leisha was getting anxious. I walked over and opened the door. Su Man stood outside. She was still wearing the thick winter jacket from yesterday. Her hair was slightly messy. Her head was lowered. Her hands were tightly holding the edge of her clothes. I immediately noticed she looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen from a sleepless night. Something had clearly happened after she returned to apartment 702. I didn't ask. I simply stepped aside. Come in. Warm air surrounded her the moment she entered. Her body relaxed slightly. Then she quickly became tense again. She knew where she was. She knew the situation. I didn't tell her to start cleaning. Instead, I returned to the stove. The sandwich continued heating. The smell of toasted bread and warm food slowly spread through the apartment. Su Man stood there awkwardly. Her stomach reacted immediately. She tried to ignore it, but hunger was stronger than pride. I placed the first sandwich on a plate. Then I looked at her. Sit. She froze. She looked at me in surprise. Today was different. No instructions. No immediate work. Just a seat. Sit down. I repeated. She hesitated, then slowly sat at the table, still cautious, still uncertain. I prepared another sandwich. Then I placed both plates down. I pushed one toward her. Eat. I picked up my own sandwich. Su Man stared at the food. For a moment, she didn't move. Yesterday, she had expected every kindness to have a condition attached. But now, there was only breakfast, nothing else. She slowly picked up the sandwich. The first bite was simple. Warm bread, fresh vegetables, ham, butter, normal food, the kind of food people used to take for granted. Her eyes suddenly became wet. She didn't even realize she was crying. The tears fell silently. Maybe it was because of the food. Maybe it was because of everything she had endured. Maybe because, after days of fear and cold, this small moment of normal life felt overwhelming. She kept eating and crying. I watched quietly. The apocalypse changed people. Sometimes fear controlled them. Sometimes hunger controlled them, and sometimes a small act of kindness could become just as powerful as a threat at the same time. Inside the seventh floor emergency stairwell, Wang Chong and four others moved upward carefully. The stairs were covered in dust. Their hands held metal pipes, crowbars, and even a fire axe. Damn. It's even colder up here. One of the men rubbed his hands together. Stop complaining. Wang Chong whispered. Keep your eyes open. His expression was ruthless. Yesterday, that first-floor apartment only had a few instant noodles. Almost useless. The scar-faced man leaned closer. Brother Wang, I heard apartment 702 has wealthy residents. That couple, both company executives. They probably stored plenty of supplies. Another man nodded. And the wife, I've seen her before. She's very beautiful. The men exchanged looks. In a desperate world, people could become obsessed with anything that represented the old life. Money, comfort, status. Wang Chong's expression darkened. Rich? Supplies? He gripped the metal pipe. Then we should take a look. Maybe they need our help. The group moved forward, slowly, quietly, like predators approaching their target. They stopped outside apartment 702. Inside apartment 701, warmth filled the room. The SU man continued eating her sandwich quietly. Outside apartment 702, a different kind of danger was approaching. The frozen apocalypse had brought out more than hunger. It had brought out the worst parts of people. I watched Sue Man wipe away her tears while forcing herself to finish the sandwich. She looked exhausted, like someone who had been pushed to the edge and was still trying to hold herself together. After finishing my own meal, I took a tissue, wiped my hands, and walked over to the storage area. I pulled out a clean towel from my supplies. Enough. Stop crying. My tone wasn't gentle, but it wasn't as harsh as before either. Go wash your face. You look terrible. Sue Man froze. She looked up at me with red eyes, then at the towel in my hand. Terrible was not a word she was used to hearing about herself. But looking at her current state, messy hair, swollen eyes, a tired expression, maybe she really did look nothing like the person she used to be. A tiny trace of a smile almost appeared on her face. Then it disappeared. She silently accepted the towel. The softness of the fabric seemed to surprise her. She walked toward the bathroom. Not like yesterday. Yesterday, she had rushed around like someone trying to escape. Today, her steps were slower, more uncertain. Her thoughts were clearly elsewhere. She remembered Li Zhe's suspicion, his anger, his accusations. Then she remembered this morning. A warm meal. A quiet room. A clean towel. She still didn't understand me. She still didn't trust me. But after everything that had happened, the contrast was impossible to ignore. The bathroom door closed. Inside, Sue Man looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen. Her hair was messy. The black and white maid outfit looked completely out of place. She wiped her face with the towel. The cool water helped her clear her thoughts. What was right? What was wrong? She no longer knew. Outside, I cleaned up the dishes. I had noticed the change in her. The hesitation, the momentary softness. People were complicated. Fear could make someone submit. But unexpected kindness could also change the way they looked at a situation. I didn't need her gratitude. I needed her to understand one thing. In this world, survival depended on the choices people made at the same time. Apartment 702 was facing a completely different problem. A knock came from the door. Not a polite knock. A heavy, impatient one. Elijah, who was sitting on the sofa trying to endure the cold and hunger, immediately looked toward the entrance. Who could come at this time? For a moment, he wondered if Sue Man had returned. But that was impossible. She had only just left. The knocking stopped. Then it became louder. Bang. 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 A rough male voice came from outside. Anyone inside? Open the door. Property inspection. Lija's expression changed. Property inspection? Now. Something felt wrong. He slowly stood up and approached the door. Looking through the peephole, he froze. There were several men outside. They were wearing random layers of winter clothing. They carried tools that looked nothing like inspection equipment. Their expressions were cold and hostile. His heart sank. They weren't property staff. They were here to take something. Before he could react, damn it, he's not opening. A voice shouted outside. Break it. The impact came immediately. Bang. The old security door shook violently. Elijah stumbled backward. Another strike. Then another. The lock began to weaken. The sound echoed through the apartment. Finally, crash. The door was forced open. Wang Chong and 4 others entered. Cold wind rushed inside. The already freezing room became even colder. Elijah fell back in fear, staring at the strangers who had forced their way into his home. Wang Chong stepped over the broken door. He looked around the apartment. The expensive decorations, the carefully arranged furniture, everything that once represented comfort. Now it was just another frozen shelter. His eyes stopped on Li Zhe. He smiled. Li Zhe, right? We're here to borrow something. The bathroom door opened. Su Man walked out. Her face was still damp. Her eyes were less swollen, but it was obvious she had cried. She had not put the white stockings back on. She walked quietly toward me. That moment, I heard faint sounds from next door, heavy impacts, voices. A disturbance. I paused slightly, but I didn't move. My attention returned to Su Man. Come here. I pointed toward the sofa. She followed the instruction. She sat down carefully. Her hands rested together. Her posture was cautious, like she was waiting for the next command. I crouched down in front of her. She immediately became tense. I took something from my supplies. A pair of black winter stockings. Not for any other reason. The room was warm, but she still spent most of her time moving around and working. Her clothes were not suitable for the environment. Keeping warm mattered. I helped her put them on. She looked away. Her expression was complicated. There was still embarrassment, still discomfort, but not the same panic as before. Too much had happened in the past 2 days: fear, hunger, disappointment, and the simple fact that this room was warm while the outside world was frozen. Her emotions had become tangled. When I finished adjusting them, she remained silent. The sounds from apartment 702 continued faintly in the distance, but inside apartment 701, everything remained calm, for now. Inside apartment 702, chaos had taken over. Search everything. Wang Chong kicked over a chair and shouted. His men tore through the apartment like thieves. Drawers were pulled out. Cabinets were forced open. Everything was scattered across the floor, but there was nothing useful. No food, no water. Only expensive clothes, documents, and decorations that meant nothing anymore. Brother Wang, nothing here. The scar-faced man looked frustrated. There's not even a snack. Wang Chong's expression darkened. He grabbed Li Zhe by the collar and lifted him up. Where did you hide the supplies? Li Zhe's face was pale. There's nothing. We ran out days ago. Bullshit. Wang Chong slapped him across the face. The impact left Li Zhe dizzy. You think people like you don't prepare backup supplies? Talk. Li Zhe shook his head desperately. I really don't have anything. Wang Chong stared at him. Then he remembered what his men had said earlier. This apartment belonged to a couple, and the wife was supposed to be beautiful. His eyes narrowed. Where's your wife? Li Zhe froze. She's not here. Not here. Wang Chong stepped closer. In this weather? Where could she possibly go? The men around him laughed. Elijah felt a chill run through him. He understood. These people weren't just after supplies. They were dangerous. For the first time since they entered, his fear was mixed with anger. I don't know. She's not here. Leave. Wang Chong looked amused. Leave? He struck Li Zhe again. The room went silent. Listen carefully. I'll ask one more time. Where is your wife? Inside apartment 701. I stood near the door. The sounds from next door were clear. The shouting, the impact, the threats. Su Man's face had turned pale. She looked toward the wall, then back at me. Fear filled her eyes. They were looking for her. That I didn't panic. Instead, I reached into my storage space. The Desert Eagle appeared in my hand. The cold metal reflected the warm light of the room. I checked the weapon calmly. For the first time since the apocalypse began, I had no doubt about protecting this. Placed. Su Man watched me silently. She looked at the weapon, then at me. She didn't know what I was going to do. In apartment 702, Li Zhe was breaking. The pain, the hunger, the cold, everything had worn him down. Stop, please, I'll tell you. Wang Chong stopped his men. He placed a foot on the floor beside Li Zhe and looked down at him. Now you're willing to talk? Where is your wife? Where are the supplies? Li Zhe looked terrified. Then he pointed toward the wall. Next door. 701. My wife. Su Man. She's there. The room became quiet. Elijah continued quickly. That guy in 701. His name is Lin Fei. He used to deliver packages. But somehow he has food, water, warmth. My wife is there because she works for him in exchange for supplies. He looked up desperately. Go there. He has everything. Just let me go. I don't want anything anymore. The words came out faster and faster. In his desperation, he gave away everything. The location, the secret, and the person who was supposed to be his closest companion. Inside apartment 701, Sue Man covered her mouth. Her entire body trembled. The walls were thin. Every word reached her clearly. She heard him reveal everything. She heard him tell them where she was. She heard him expose Lin Fei's supplies. And she heard him abandon her without hesitation. That moment, something inside her broke. Yesterday, she had thought the suspicion and anger were already the worst he could show. She was wrong. There was something colder beneath that. Her tears fell silently. Not from fear. Not from humiliation. From disappointment. The last bit of hope she had for her marriage disappeared. The person she once believed would stand beside her had chosen himself the moment survival became difficult. She sat there silently. Empty. I remained by the door. I heard everything. I heard Lija's confession. I heard Sue Man's silence. People were complicated. When everything was comfortable, everyone talked about principles. But when survival was on the line, some people revealed who they truly were. I looked back at Sue Man. The last connection holding her to apartment 702 had disappeared. Outside, Wang Chong and his men were excited. The apartment with supplies, food, water, warmth, and someone who knew how to survive. Compared to the empty apartment behind them, this was the real prize. Wang Chong smiled. Looks like we found something valuable. The group moved toward my door. Their confidence grew with every step. Finally, Wang Chong slammed his metal pipe against the door. Bang! People inside. Open the door. Hand over the food and supplies. Don't make this difficult. His voice echoed through the hallway, like a pack of hungry wolves outside a shelter. Inside was warmth. A safe room, and a woman whose world had just collapsed. Outside was a group of desperate survivors, waiting to break in. Damn it. When Wang Chong saw there was no response from inside apartment 701, he lost what little patience he had left. He looked at the scar-faced man. Break the door. The man grinned and raised the fire axe. He prepared to strike the lock. But before the axe could fall, click, the lock moved. The old metal door slowly opened from the inside. Everyone outside froze. The axe stopped in midair. Then they saw me standing behind the door, calm, relaxed, completely different from the frozen world outside. I was wearing only a thin shirt. The warmth inside the apartment flowed into the hallway. The men stared. They had spent days freezing, starving, and fighting for scraps. But inside this apartment, the lights were on. The room was warm. There were supplies stacked in the corner, bottled water, boxes, food, everything they had been desperate for. Their eyes changed instantly. Shock, greed, disbelief. They couldn't understand how this was possible. A delivery worker, someone they thought was powerless. How could he have all of this? Behind me, Sue Man stood silently. She had changed. The fear in her eyes was obvious. When she saw the men outside, she instinctively stepped closer. Outside was desperation and violence. Inside was the only safe place she had left. I could feel her trembling. But I didn't look back. My eyes stayed on Wang Chong and his group. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at what I had. The food, the warmth, the supplies. And they had already decided those things belonged to them. Wang Chong was the first to speak. Hand everything over. His voice was filled with arrogance. The food, the water, everything. He tightened his grip on the metal pipe. Otherwise, you're going to regret it. I looked at him calmly. Why? The question seemed to surprise him. Then he laughed. Why? Because I said so. He stepped forward. His expression had already revealed his answer. This wasn't a request. It was robbery. I slowly raised my right hand. The Desert Eagle appeared. The moment the silver weapon entered their view, everyone stopped. The hallway became silent. The gun was pointed directly at Wang Chong. His expression changed. The confidence disappeared. The men behind him froze as well. They had expected resistance. Maybe a knife. Maybe a fight. Not this. The gun. A real firearm. The atmosphere changed instantly. Hand over everything. I looked at Wang Chong. Is this enough? My voice was calm, but the effect was immediate. Nobody moved. The cold metal reflected the dim hallway light. For a moment, even the storm outside seemed quieter. Wang Chong stared at the weapon. Fear flashed across his face. Then disbelief replaced it. No way. He suddenly shouted, "This is fake." His voice grew louder. "You think you can scare us with a toy? A gun? In this country? You're just a delivery guy?" His words seemed to give the others courage. They looked at each other. Slowly, their fear began to fade. "That's right. It's probably fake. He's bluffing." Greed returned. The men tightened their grips on their weapons. They stepped forward. They thought they had seen through me. They thought they had nothing to fear. Su Man's face changed. She realized what was about to happen. "Don't." Her voice was barely audible. Then the men rushed forward that I didn't move, that I didn't need to. The gun in my hand remained steady, that I had already given them a chance. They chose not to take it. The first man reached the doorway. My finger pulled the trigger. Bang! The gunshot exploded. Through the hallway, the sound was deafening. The man at the front stopped instantly. His expression changed from anger to shock. Then his body collapsed. The others froze. The hallway fell silent again. Only the echo of the gunshot remained. The men who had charged forward finally understood. This was not a threat. This was reality, that I stood inside the warm apartment. The gun remained steady in my hand. Outside the door, the people who had come to take everything from me no longer looked like predators. They looked afraid. The hallway fell silent, to dead, unnatural silence. Wang Chong and the three men who remained with Dao Ba face stood frozen in place, as if an invisible hammer had smashed straight through them. The arrogance, greed, and cruelty on their faces vanished the moment the gun fired. All that remained was pure instinctive fear. The man on the ground wasn't getting up. There was blood. Real blood. That meant the gun was real. The weapon they had laughed at moments ago wasn't a bluff. It was something that could take a life in an instant. Their hands tightened around their weapons, but the strength had already left their bodies. Their fingers trembled uncontrollably. Their legs felt weak. They finally understood. This wasn't intimidation. This wasn't a desperate man pretending to be dangerous. The doorway between them wasn't just a physical boundary, that it was the line between life and death, that I slowly moved the barrel of the Desert Eagle across them. Every man I aimed at stiffened. No one dared move. "Anyone else?" I said coldly. "Want to try?" My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the hallway. "Try what?" The answer came immediately. Dao Ba's face dropped to his knees. "Big brother, please." His voice shook violently as he slammed his forehead against the floor. "We were wrong. We didn't know. Please let us go." The others followed. The same men who had been threatening to break down my door seconds ago were now begging for their lives. Wang Chong was the only one still standing. But even he looked like he had lost all strength. His steel pipe slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a sharp clang. For the first time, he understood that all his threats, all his confidence, all the power he thought he had, meant nothing here. Not against someone who had already decided to pull the trigger. The food, the supplies, the things they had come here to steal. None of it mattered anymore. Survival was the only thing left. I held Su Man close as she continued trembling behind me. The gunshot had shattered more than just one man's body, that it had destroyed the illusion that violence belonged only to people like Wang Chong. The moment someone stronger appeared, their so-called courage disappeared. The barrel of the gun still carried a trace of heat. Wang Chong stared at me. His lips moved. He wanted to beg. He wanted to explain, but I didn't give him the chance. People like him were dangerous. He had followers, that he had the willingness to hurt others. Leaving him alive meant leaving behind a future threat that in this world. Hesitation was a weakness I couldn't afford. Bang! The second shot echoed through the building. Wang Chong collapsed. The hallway went quiet again. The remaining men were completely broken. They kept their heads pressed to the floor, begging over and over, unable to even form complete sentences. That I looked down at them. They were no longer threats, just frightened survivors who had chosen the wrong side of the door. That I lowered the gun slightly. "Clean up the bodies outside." My tone was calm, almost casual. The three men immediately nodded. Yes, we'll do it." I glanced past them toward the open doorway of apartment 702. Elijah was still inside. He had watched everything. He had seen the gun. He had seen what happened when someone crossed me. The moment our eyes met, his face turned pale. He stumbled backward, crawling away like he wanted to disappear into the darkness of his own home. I ignored him. My attention returned to Su Man. She was still gripping my clothes tightly, her face buried against my back. Her whole body was shaking. The blood, the gunshots, the Sudden violence. Dai Ti was too much. I placed a hand on her shoulder. It's over. My voice wasn't gentle, but it wasn't cold either. Su Man slowly looked up. Her eyes were filled with fear and confusion. She glanced toward the hallway, saw the aftermath, and immediately looked away. Her face went pale. That I didn't say anything else. That I brought her back into apartment 701 up behind us. The door closed. Bang. The thick metal door separated us from the blood, the fear, and the people who had just surrendered. Outside, Dao Ba Face forced himself to stand. He looked at the bodies on the floor. Then he looked back at the closed door of 701. There was fear in his eyes. But there was also something else. Understanding. The world had changed, and the rules had changed with it. A few minutes later, after they dragged the bodies away, Dao Ba Face's eyes shifted toward apartment 702. The broken door was still open. Inside, Lija was curled up in the corner, pale and terrified. A wave of anger rose inside Dao Ba Face. Because of this man. Because Lija had told them there were supplies. Because Lija had told them about his beautiful wife. Because Lija had led them here. Wang Chong and their companion were dead because of him. The fear and humiliation they had just suffered needed somewhere to go. Dao Ba Face picked up the steel pipe from the ground. He looked at the other two men. They understood immediately. The three of them walked toward apartment 702. This time, they weren't searching for supplies. They were looking for someone to blame. The moment Lija saw the three men return, his blood ran cold. They weren't leaving. They were coming back. And judging from their expressions, they weren't here to talk. He stumbled backward, raising his hands in panic. What are you doing? Don't come any closer. You already took everything. There's nothing left. I swear. Dao Ba Face kicked the broken door aside and stepped into the apartment. Doing what? He sneered, settling the score. His eyes were full of resentment. If you hadn't sent us here, would we have lost two men? Before Lija could respond, the anger that had been building up exploded. Get him. The next moment, fists and metal pipes came down. The frozen apartment was filled with Lija's screams. Stop. Please. Stop. But this time, there was no one coming to save him. N01 to open the door, N01 to stand between him and the consequences of his own choices. Inside apartment 701, I sat quietly with Su Man beside me. The sounds from next door carried clearly through the wall. She trembled slightly when she heard them. But unlike before, she didn't ask what was happening. She didn't show pity. She didn't show concern. She simply leaned closer to me. After what Lija had done, something inside her had already broken. The person she had trusted most had been the one to hand her over. Now, survival had become the only thing she could hold on to. I could feel the change. Fear was still there. Pain was still there. But there was also acceptance. The old world was gone. The old rules were gone. The only question left was who could provide safety when everything else collapsed. The heater continued running softly. The noises from apartment 702 eventually faded. Silence returned to the 7th floor. That Su Man remained beside me, no longer shaking as violently as before. For the first time in days, she was somewhere warm, somewhere with food, somewhere protected from the frozen wasteland outside. That I looked at her. You've made your choice. She lowered her eyes. From now on, you'll help manage things here. Her expression shifted slightly. My personal manager. I paused. Follow me, and you won't freeze or starve. Those words were simple. But in this world, simple things had become priceless. Su Man stayed quiet for a long time. Then she slowly nodded. A small movement. But it was enough. Good. I leaned back. From now on, you'll be the person I rely on here. She looked up. I continued. If more survivors join us in the future, you'll help organize them. Her eyes flickered. The idea was complicated. She still hated what had happened. She still remembered the humiliation. But compared to the cold darkness outside, compared to being abandoned by the person who should have protected her, having a role, having value, having a place in this new order was something she couldn't completely reject. The world had changed. Everyone was forced to adapt. Some became predators. Some became victims. Others learned how to survive between the two. Su Man closed her eyes. After a long struggle, she gave another quiet nod. Okay. Later, after everything settled down, I started thinking about the future. This apartment was only one small corner of the world. Food was important. Weapons were important. But information was just as valuable. I looked at Su Man. You've lived in this community longer than I have. She looked over. I need your help. With what? Tell me about the people here. She understood immediately. Not gossip, not rumors, useful information, who had skills, who had resources, who could become an ally, who might become a problem. She thought carefully before answering. And that was when I realized something. The woman who had walked into my apartment looking for shelter was becoming something else, someone who could help me understand this new world. Outside, the snow continued covering everything. The old civilization was buried beneath the ice, and a new order was slowly taking shape. That I sat quietly, thinking about what came next. The attack had made one thing clear. Apartment 701 couldn't remain just a place to hide. If I wanted to survive the long winter ahead, I needed information, that I needed people, that I needed control over this building. Su Man was still beside me, and unlike before, she no longer looked at me with only fear. She understood the new reality. After everything that happened, she had chosen the safest path she could find, survival. That I looked at her. You've lived here longer than I have. She nodded. Tell me about the other residents. Su Man paused. Then she began searching through her memories. Our building is Building 2, she said quietly. It's in the middle of the community. Building 1 is on the left, Building 3 is on the right. She thought for a moment. When I went to the property office before, I heard some people talking about Building 3. What did they say? There are 2 female college students living there. I raised an eyebrow. College students? From Minghua University, I think. They're supposed to come from a wealthy family. She hesitated. People said they were twins. Twins, that was interesting, but I didn't rush to act. Information was useful. Acting blindly was dangerous. That I needed to know the situation first. What about our building? Su Man thought carefully. As far as I know, there are quite a few residents worth paying attention to. She continued. On the 5th floor, I think one of the apartments has a young woman who just graduated. She works at a company as a receptionist. I don't know much about her, but she's usually friendly. I memorized it. Anyone else? There's a mother and daughter on the 8th floor. Apartment 801. She frowned slightly while recalling. The mother looks younger than her age. I heard she used to be a dance instructor. Her daughter is still in high school. I nodded. A family, possible information source, possible complication. Anything else? Su Man lowered her voice. The top floor. Apartment 1101. She looked at me. That's a duplex. I think someone who does live streams lives there. I don't see her often, but people know her because she's usually dressed very differently from everyone else. A streamer, another person to keep in mind. That I leaned back and considered everything. A few days ago, I had been just another resident in this building, someone nobody cared about. Now, the entire building had become something I needed to understand. The frozen world outside wasn't going to wait for me to prepare. Neither were the people inside. That I looked at Su Man. Good. She seemed surprised by the simple approval. You've done well. A complicated expression flashed across her face. She had lost a lot. Her old life, her marriage, the confidence she once had. But now she had something she didn't have before. A purpose, a role, a reason to remain useful. That I stood up. Come on. Su Man followed my movement. The next step wasn't just surviving inside apartment 701. It was making sure this entire building didn't become a threat later. I opened the apartment door. The smell of blood still lingered faintly in the hallway. Daoba Face and the other 2 men immediately straightened when they saw me. They looked nervous. They had seen what happened when they challenged me. Big brother. Daoba Face forced a respectful smile. That I looked past them toward apartment 702. The broken door was still open. Inside was quiet. Is it handled? Daoba Face nodded quickly. Yes. Everything is taken care of. I didn't ask for details. Elijah was no longer important. My attention returned to the 3 men in front of me. They weren't allies. Not yet. But they could be useful. Listen carefully. Their expressions became serious. I have a job for you. The 3 immediately stood straighter. The rules of this building had changed, and they needed to understand who those rules belonged to now. I watched Daoba Face, and the other 2 disappear down the stairs. The first step was complete. The residents of Building 2 needed to understand one thing. In this frozen world, waiting for rescue was no longer a plan. Someone had to create order, and now, that person was me. I turned back into apartment 701 and closed the door. The cold, dark hallway disappeared behind it. Inside, The warmth returned. Su Man had changed into clean clothes and was standing quietly in the room, waiting for my next instruction. Her attitude had changed, not because she trusted me completely, not because she had forgotten what happened, but because she understood the reality outside this door. Strength decided everything now. I had strength, and she needed what only I could provide. Meanwhile, Dao Ba Face and the other two began their work. Starting from the first floor, they knocked on every apartment door in Building 2. Open up. Their voices echoed through the frozen hallway. Listen carefully. The person on the 7th floor has a message. Behind every door, frightened survivors held their breath. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew who this 7th floor person was, but everyone knew one thing. Food was priceless, and the next words made many people's hearts race. Those who want to survive, those who need food, gather at the 7th floor hallway tomorrow morning at 8. Food will be provided. For people who had been starving for days, those words were like a spark in endless darkness. Hope. But then came the warning. Anyone who causes trouble. Dao Ba Face glanced at the dark stains still remaining in the hallway. Remember the gunshots. The message was simple. Come. Or face the consequences. On the 5th floor, apartment 502. Zhao Qian was curled up in the corner of her sofa. She wrapped every blanket she could find around herself, but the cold still seeped through. She had graduated only a year ago. Normally, she was still full of the energy of someone just starting life. But after several days trapped in this frozen city, hunger and fear had worn her down. The food had run out 3 days ago. The last bottle of water was gone that morning. She had tried scraping frost from the window and melting it. She had even licked the ice, but it barely helped. Her throat hurt. Her stomach cramped painfully. Sometimes she thought she could smell food that wasn't there. Fresh bread, hot meals, anything. Mom. The word slipped out unconsciously. Then she remembered. Her mother was no longer here. She was alone. The thought made her eyes sting. How long could she survive like this? One more day? 2. She didn't know. On the 8th floor, apartment 801. Zhou Yun held her daughter tightly. The two of them were wrapped under a thick blanket, sharing the little warmth they had left. Zhou Yun was once a dance instructor. Even in her 40s, she had always taken good care of herself. But now exhaustion covered her face. Her daughter, Xiaoyu, was only in high school. The girl who used to have bright cheeks was now pale and weak. Mom, I'm cold. Zhou Yun forced a smile. Just hold on a little longer. Stay close to Mom. But inside, she felt helpless. The food was gone. The water was almost gone. She had tried melting snow, but the cold was unbearable, and the amount of water she could collect was tiny. Looking at her daughter trembling in her arms, she felt a pain she had never experienced before. For years, she had done everything she could to give her daughter a good life. Now she couldn't even guarantee basic survival. Then suddenly, bang, bang, bang. The violent knocking shattered the silence. Zhao Qian jumped. Zhou Yun immediately pulled Xiaoyu closer. Nobody moved. Nobody dared speak. A rough voice came from outside. Open the door. Listen carefully. Message from the 7th floor. The people inside froze. 7th floor? Who was there? The voice continued. Anyone who wants to survive. Tomorrow morning at 8. Gather at the 7th floor hallway. The 7th floor boss will provide food. Food. That single word changed everything. Zhao Qian's empty eyes suddenly lit up. Food? Real food? After days of darkness, even the possibility felt impossible. But Zhou Yun didn't relax. Instead, her expression became more cautious. Someone was giving away food for free. In this world? Impossible. The man outside continued. Don't pretend you didn't hear me. I've delivered the message. Come or don't come, that's your choice. But remember, his voice turned colder. Those who refuse, those who cause trouble. Think carefully about the 2 gunshots earlier. Gunshots. Both women froze. They had heard those sounds before. They thought something had exploded. They never imagined someone had fired a weapon. The fear spread quickly. Across Building 2, the same message was repeated. Some people heard only one thing. Food. A chance to survive. Others heard something else. Gunshots. A warning that a new power had appeared inside the building. And tomorrow morning, everyone would have to decide whether to approach it or fear it. I leaned back on the sofa in apartment 701, while Su Man sat on the soft carpet, quietly massaging my legs. The room was still the same cramped single apartment I had lived in before. Back then, I had no choice that a small bed, a tiny table, a limited space. It was enough when I was alone. But things were different now. I had Su Man, and tomorrow, after gathering the residents of Building 2, there would likely be more people under my control. This place was no longer suitable. My eyes moved toward the old single bed in the corner. It creaked even when I moved slightly. If more people came in, there wouldn't even be enough space to turn around. Too small, too ordinary. It no longer matched what I was building. I remembered something about this neighborhood. Every building had a top-floor residence. The entire 11th floor belonged to one apartment, a large duplex with more than 200 square meters of space, wide views, luxury decoration, a private terrace. That was the kind of place that fit my current situation. Hey, I interrupted Su Man's movements. She immediately looked up. 1101, I said casually. The top-floor duplex you mentioned before. The one where that internet celebrity lives. Do you know the layout? Su Man paused, then thought carefully. That apartment. I heard it has a really good design. The living room is huge, facing south, with a large terrace. There are probably 4 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. The decoration was supposed to be very expensive. For bedrooms, a large living room, a terrace, a top floor. I quickly calculated the advantages. High position, easy to defend, excellent view. Large enough for future expansion. It was practically made to become my base. A faint smile appeared on my face. All right, stop. I tapped her head lightly. We should think about moving. Su Man froze slightly. Moving? To the top floor? She lowered her eyes and looked at her clean clothes. Then she thought about the freezing apartment next door, the place that used to be called home. The difference was enormous. Maybe depending on someone powerful and cold like me was not the worst possible outcome anymore. At least here, she could survive. The fate of the original owner of 1101. That was not something she could decide, and not something she needed to worry about. As night deepened, the snow outside continued falling. But inside apartment 701, warmth remained. I activated the system. Daily sign-in available. Confirm sign-in. The familiar blue screen appeared. Option 1. Tactical assault rifle, unlimited ammunition, and advanced firearm mastery. Option 2. Small ecological planting box. Produces basic vegetables continuously. Option 3. 1 complete cow, processed and separated into cuts. Option 4. A deck of cards that can never win, perhaps useful for passing time. When I saw the third option, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. A whole cow. The system really was straightforward. I didn't hesitate. Choose option 3. The rifle was tempting, but I already had enough protection for now. The planting box was valuable, but it wouldn't solve my immediate needs. Food was still the most important thing. A flash of light appeared. Inside my system space, a huge amount of neatly processed beef appeared. Tenderloin, ribs, brisket, shank, even several massive beef legs. Everything had been cleaned and prepared. The amount was enough to last a long time. I withdrew my consciousness and looked at Su Man, who was standing quietly nearby. Can you cook? She hesitated, then nodded, a little. Before the apocalypse, she had a housekeeper who handled most meals. She could make simple dishes, but she was far from being a professional cook. That was enough. I raised my hand. A large beef leg appeared on the empty table with a heavy thud. Su Man stared at it. It was almost thicker than her arm. You don't need to know much. I pointed toward the corner. See that machine? That's an intelligent cooking device. Put the ingredients inside. Choose the dish. It handles the rest. Su Man looked at the machine, then at the huge piece of meat. Surprise flashed across her face. But she quickly nodded. Yes. She walked over and struggled to carry the beef leg. Following my instructions, she placed it into the machine. The screen immediately lit up. Different options appeared. Braised beef, black pepper beef strips, roasted beef leg, beef soup. After thinking briefly, she selected 2 dishes, black pepper beef strips, tomato beef soup. She added potatoes and tomatoes from the supplies I provided, then pressed start. The machine began working. A low mechanical sound filled the room. Cutting, cleaning, cooking. Everything happened automatically. Su Man stepped aside and waited quietly. Meanwhile, I returned to the sofa. The warmth of the room, the steady operation of the machine, the feeling of having supplies and control. Everything was completely different from the days when I struggled just to survive. After a while, the smell began spreading, the rich aroma of beef, the sharp scent of black pepper, the sweet and sour fragrance of tomato soup. Even I felt my appetite increase. Compared to my previous simple cooking, this was on another level. About 20 minutes later, beep, the machine finished. Su Man opened the compartment. Inside were two sealed containers. She opened them. The smell became even stronger. One container held glossy black pepper beef strips, tender slices of beef covered in thick sauce, mixed with peppers and onions. The other contained tomato beef soup. The broth was rich. The beef looked soft enough to fall apart. Su Man stared at the food silently. Her throat moved slightly. She had been hungry all day. The breakfast from the morning was long gone. I sat up and waved. Bring it here. I sat back on the sofa while Su Man brought the two food containers and a bowl of rice over to the small table. I picked up my chopsticks and tasted the black pepper beef first. The texture was tender. The sauce was rich. The cooking was surprisingly good. Then I tried the tomato beef soup. The broth was sweet and slightly sour, and the beef had been cooked until it was soft and full of flavor. Not bad. I gave my evaluation and glanced at Su Man, who was standing nearby. She tried not to stare, but her eyes kept drifting toward the food. I tapped my leg. Sit. Her body stiffened slightly. Then I added, eat with me. She looked at the food. Then she looked away. The hesitation only lasted a few seconds. She slowly walked over and sat beside me. Compared with the first time, she was less resistant. The embarrassment was still there, but hunger and the warmth of a real meal were stronger. I picked up a piece of beef and handed it to her. Open. She closed her eyes briefly and accepted it. The moment she tasted the food, her expression changed. After days of hunger, even a simple meal felt like a luxury. She ate carefully at first, still trying to maintain her composure. But as the hot soup and beef reached her stomach, her tension gradually faded. Soon, she began eating more naturally. The two of us finished the dinner in silence. Outside was a frozen wasteland. Inside was a warm room with fresh food. That contrast was becoming the new reality of this world. After the meal, I leaned back and let out a satisfied breath. Su Man finished the last bit of soup and quietly placed the bowl down. I waved my hand. Get up. She immediately stood aside. Then I opened my system space. A large portable bathing pool appeared in the empty area of the room. Several sealed barrels of clean water appeared beside it. Su Man looked at the scene. Unlike the first few times, she no longer reacted with shock. She had already accepted that the things I could produce were beyond normal understanding. I connected a portable heater and directed warm air toward the pool. Then I had her pour in the water. From now on, things like this are your responsibility. Preparing supplies, organizing the room, handling daily chores. She lowered her head. Yes. The heater worked efficiently. Not long after, steam began rising from the pool. The room became even warmer. I checked the temperature. Perfect. Go in. Su Man paused. Even after everything she had experienced, this still made her hesitate. But after a moment, she followed the instruction. She changed into a clean outfit afterward. For the first time in days, the exhaustion and cold that had followed her everywhere finally began to disappear. I entered the pool as well. The warm water surrounded me. The constant tension of surviving the apocalypse slowly faded. For a while, there was only silence, no screams, no fighting, no fear. Just warmth. I leaned against the side of the pool and closed my eyes. This was the kind of life people could only dream of before the apocalypse. While the world outside froze, I had food, shelter, and a place that was slowly becoming my own territory. After some time, I spoke. Help me loosen my shoulders. Su Man hesitated. Then she moved behind me and carefully followed the instruction. Her technique was inexperienced, but she was serious. She controlled her strength carefully, trying to do the task properly. I could tell she was beginning to adapt to her new role, not because she had forgotten the past, but because she understood the new rules of this world. Strength created security, and security was something everyone needed. After resting for a while, I stopped her. That's enough. We left the pool and dried off with clean towels from my supplies. I changed into comfortable clothes. Su Man also changed into a soft outfit I had prepared for her. The room was quiet, warm, safe. Tomorrow, I would continue building my base. The second floor was only the beginning. The entire building 2 still waited outside. That I woke up the next morning with Su Man still in my arms for the first time in days. I didn't wake up to cold air, hunger, or the sound of chaos outside. The room was warm, quiet, safe. The old single bed beneath us was still as uncomfortable as ever, and I glanced at it with some dissatisfaction. This thing really needed to be replaced. Once I moved to the top floor, I would get a proper bed, something large, something comfortable, something that matched the life I was building. I looked at Su Man, who was still asleep. Her expression was calmer than before. The exhaustion from the previous days had faded slightly, and for a moment, she looked less like someone struggling to survive and more like the person she used to be. But this world had already changed both of us. Before I could think further, the familiar system notification sounded. Daily sign-in available. Confirm sign-in. The blue interface appeared. Option 1. First-order telekinesis seed. Immediately become a first-order ability user and obtain basic telekinetic control. Option 2. Advanced multifunction construction robot. Equipped with building, repair, and security functions. Option 3. Luxury double bed with temperature control system. Maximum comfort guaranteed. Option 4. A box of endless chewing gum. Multiple flavors available. My attention immediately locked onto the first option, telekinesis, ability user. Until now, the system had mainly provided supplies and tools, weapons, food, equipment, but this time, it offered something completely different. A supernatural ability. In this world, weapons were useful, but true personal strength mattered even more. Without hesitation, I made my choice. Option 1. Selection confirmed. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the first-order telekinesis seed. Beginning fusion. A cool stream of energy appeared deep inside my mind. It spread through my body like flowing water. There was no pain. Only a strange feeling of clarity, as if something that had been dormant inside me had finally awakened. My thoughts became sharper, my senses became stronger, I could feel Su Man's steady breathing beside me. I could even faintly hear movement from the hallway outside. At the same time, knowledge about basic telekinesis appeared in my mind. Moving objects, mental impact, enhanced perception. I focused my attention on the empty glass on the bedside table. Rise. The cup trembled, then slowly lifted from the surface. 0.10 centimeters, 0.20 centimeters. It hovered awkwardly in the air. A few seconds later, my concentration weakened. The glass dropped back onto the table. Success. The control was still rough. The power was still limited, but there was no doubt. This was a real supernatural ability. I couldn't help feeling excited. With the Desert Eagle in my hands, and this new ability awakened, surviving the early stages of the apocalypse had become much easier. That moment, sounds from outside became louder. Dao Ba Face's rough voice, the footsteps of many people, the nervous whispers of survivors gathering in the hallway. Looks like the residents of Building 2 had arrived. I stopped resting and lightly woke Su Man. Get up. She opened her eyes, still slightly confused. When she realized how close she was, a faint embarrassment crossed her face. She quickly got up. Yes. Soon, she changed into her usual work clothes and began preparing breakfast. Using the supplies from my system space, she made sandwiches with bread, eggs, and ham. The cooking machine quickly finished the meal. 2 warm cups of milk were placed on the table. I sat there eating while continuing to practice controlling my new ability. The knife on the table slowly rose into the AI. It rotated unevenly. Not perfect, but every attempt improved my control. Then, boss. Dao Ba Face's voice came from outside. Everyone is here. I finished the last bite of my sandwich and stood up. I walked to the door. I didn't bother changing out of my comfortable clothes. The lock clicked. The door opened. The 7th floor hallway was packed with people. 20 or 30 residents stood there. Men, women, the elderly. Everyone looked exhausted. Their faces were pale. Their clothes were thin. Their bodies trembled from the cold. But their eyes were all focused on me. Fear, suspicion, hope, and most importantly, hunger. When the door opened, they saw me standing there with a half-eaten sandwich in my hand. They froze. This was the person Dao Ba Face had described, the person who controlled food, the person who had fired the gunshots. He looked younger than they expected, almost ordinary. But then they noticed the warmth coming from apartment 701. They smelled the food. They remembered the gunshots from yesterday. and nobody dared underestimate me. Daoba Face and the other two immediately stepped forward. Boss. Their voices were respectful that I looked over the crowd. Nobody spoke. The entire hallway became silent that I slowly took another bite of my sandwich. The only sound was chewing, and the occasional trembling teeth of people fighting against the cold that I looked at these survivors. Yesterday, they were strangers. Today, their survival depended on what I decided. The feeling was unfamiliar, but I understood it. Power changed the way people looked at you. And now, I had more than supplies that I had authority. And I had a strength that ordinary people could never reach. The moment I stepped out of apartment 701, every eye in the hallway turned toward me. I was still wearing my loose sleepwear, still chewing the last bit of my sandwich. But nobody looked at me like the ordinary delivery worker they remembered. Not anymore. I looked over the crowd of survivors. Their faces were pale. Their bodies trembled from the cold. Some were barely standing. These people had already reached the edge of their limits. I moved my thoughts slightly. The next moment, several sealed boxes of compressed biscuits and cases of bottled water appeared beside my feet. The sudden appearance caused the entire hallway to fall silent. Then, a wave of suppressed gasps spread through the crowd. Everyone stared. No one could take their eyes away from the food and water. Their empty stomachs reacted before their minds did. Five-floor resident Zhao Qian covered her mouth. Her eyes widened as she stared at the supplies. There really was food that he wasn't lying. With these supplies, she could survive. On the other side of the crowd, Zhou Yun held her daughter Xiaoyu tightly. Unlike some of the others, she wasn't only looking at the food. She was watching me. The warm apartment behind me, my healthy appearance. The supplies that appeared from nowhere. A thought slowly formed in her mind. This man was hiding something far beyond ordinary people. Following him might truly mean survival. The crowd began to stir. Hope spread faster than fear. People instinctively wanted to move closer. I watched their reactions calmly. Good. Hope was useful. Fear alone could control people temporarily, but survival was what truly bound them together. I glanced at Daoba Face. The person from 1101? Daoba Face immediately looked around. Then he lowered his head. Boss, she hasn't come down. His expression darkened. Should I take some people up and bring her here? No need. I waved my hand. The woman upstairs had her own purpose. There was no rush. I finished the sandwich, brushed the crumbs from my fingers, and stepped forward. The small movement alone made the crowd quiet down. My name is Lin Fei. My voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. Some of you may have seen me before. I used to deliver packages around this neighborhood. I paused, but that was before. My eyes swept across them. Everyone knows what the world has become. I pointed at the supplies beside me, then toward the frozen city outside. I can provide food. I can provide a chance to survive. But from today onward, my rules apply. The hallway became even quieter. No one is forcing you. I looked at them. If someone doesn't want to follow my arrangements, you can leave building 2. I won't stop you. The moment those words left my mouth, many people changed expressions. Leave? In this weather? Outside was a frozen wasteland. Walking out of this building was no different from choosing death. A few people looked unwilling today. Few exchanged uncertain glances. Then I lifted my hand. The Desert Eagle appeared. The silver weapon immediately froze the entire hallway. I aimed at the empty floor ahead. Bang! The gunshot exploded. The concrete floor cracked. Dust scattered. Everyone flinched. I allowed you to speak? My voice was cold. The effect was immediate. Every trace of hesitation disappeared. Nobody moved. Nobody dared breathe too loudly. Fear had returned. But this time, it was the kind of fear that created order. I put the gun away. Now, you listen. First, I am creating a guard team. My eyes moved across the younger men in the crowd. Those who are strong enough can join. Members of the guard team will receive priority food and water. A few people immediately looked up. Then I continued. And regular members will receive additional meat supplies. The hallway changed. Meat. That single word carried incredible weight. After days of hunger, meat was almost a luxury from another world. Several young men straightened their backs. Their hesitation disappeared. I looked at Daoba Face. Daoba. Yes, boss. He immediately stood straight. You will temporarily manage the guard team. Choose people who are reliable and physically capable. I'll explain the details later. Daoba Face's eyes lit up. Yes, boss. He had gone from a desperate survivor to someone with authority. He understood exactly what that meant. Finally, I pointed toward the supplies. Distribute these. One portion per person. Don't let them starve. People are more useful alive. Daoba face immediately moved. Together with his two men, he organized the crowd. They forced everyone into a line and began handing out the supplies. Point one package of compressed biscuits. Point one bottle of water. Simple, but to these people, it was a lifeline. Some hugged their supplies tightly. Some looked toward me with fear, some with gratitude that I watched silently. Fear alone wouldn't last. People needed something to hope for. The guard team, the food, the promise of meat. Those were the chains that would keep this building together. And I would be holding the other ends. I turned back toward apartment 701. My eyes briefly passed over Zhao Qian and Zhou Yun. They had both received their supplies. The first seeds had been planted. Now I just had to wait for them to grow. I opened the door. The noise, fear, and hope of the hallway were shut outside once again. Inside apartment 701, everything returned to silence. But outside, a new order had already begun. I stepped back into apartment 701 and closed the door. Behind me, the tense silence in the hallway immediately broke apart. The moment I was gone, the pressure everyone had been holding in finally released. Then came the chaos. Line up. Daoba face raised the broken mop handle in his hand and shouted, anyone who pushes again, I'll deal with them myself. His two men stood beside him, copying his attitude and helping maintain order. The people who had already received food clutched their supplies tightly to them. A package of biscuits and a bottle of water were more precious than anything they owned before the disaster. Those who had not received anything pushed forward desperately. Their eyes were filled with only one thing, survival. A few younger men quickly approached Daoba face. Brother Daoba, we want to join the guard team. Yeah, we're strong. We can work. Just give us food. We'll do anything. The noise grew louder. Daoba face's patience quickly disappeared. He kicked aside a man trying to cut in line. Enough. His voice thundered through the hallway. Do you think the boss leaves and there are no rules anymore? Everyone froze. He pointed the mop handle at them. Anyone who causes trouble won't receive food tomorrow. Starve if you want. That threat worked better than any weapon. Everyone remembered the gunshots from earlier. They remembered the bodies outside. The crowd gradually quieted. Soon, two uneven lines formed. Point one for receiving supplies. Point one for joining the guard team. Daoba face finally let out a breath. Listen carefully. Food registration on the left. Guard team applications on the right. Stand properly. Just as he finished organizing the crowd, click. The door to apartment 701 opened again. Everyone turned. Standing there was Su Man. She was still wearing the black and white maid outfit. Her white stockings were spotless. Her hair was neatly arranged. Her face carried a faint, healthy glow that none of the others in the hallway possessed, compared with the exhausted survivors around her. She looked like someone from another world. The people in the hallway were pale, thin, and wrapped in worn clothes. She stood there clean, warm, and well-fed. Daoba face immediately changed expressions. The fierce attitude he had shown moments ago disappeared. He hurried over with a respectful smile. Miss Su, why did you come out? Did the boss give new instructions? His tone was completely different from before. Su Man looked at him. Then she looked at the people around her, the same neighbors who once stood on equal ground with her. Some looked at her with envy, some with curiosity, some with fear. A strange feeling slowly appeared inside her, a feeling she had never experienced before. Superiority. Not long ago, she had been one of them. She had also been hungry. She had also been desperate. But now, she lived in warmth. She wore clean clothes. She ate real food. And these people were lowering their voices when speaking to her. Everything came from the man inside that room. From Lin Fei.Su Man took a quiet breath. She suppressed her emotions and tried to imitate his calm, distant tone. The boss asked me to handle registration. She paused. Her eyes swept across the crowd. Registration for suitable people in this building. Daoba face froze for a moment. Then he immediately understood. Understood. Leave it to me. He turned around. Everyone heard that. Miss Su is handling registration. Answer whatever she asks. Su Man nodded slightly. She was satisfied with his attitude. Daoba face's respect was something she had never received before. She walked over to the small broken table he had prepared, that a piece of paper and a pen were already waiting. She sat down, and for the first time, she was no longer the person being judged. She was the person doing the judging, starting from the left. Those receiving supplies should report their name, apartment number, and how many people live there. Her voice was calm, still slightly unfamiliar, still not completely natural, but it carried authority. The line slowly moved forward. One person after another stepped in front of her. Everyone lowered their heads. Everyone answered carefully. SU Man wrote down each piece of information. Name, apartment, family members. She realized something. This feeling was strangely addictive. Not because these people respected her, but because she had finally escaped the position of weakness. When Zhao Qian from apartment 502 arrived, Su Man looked up. The girl in front of her was exhausted. Her face was pale from hunger, but Su Man could still recognize the traces of her former appearance, that a young woman who once had confidence, now reduced to someone waiting for a single package of food. Name, apartment, number of people. Su Man's voice remained flat. Zhao Qian, 502, only me. The girl spoke quietly. She avoided eye contact. Su Man wrote it down, then paused. She added a small note beside the name. Quiet, cautious. Stand aside for now. There will be something else later. Zhao Qian froze. She didn't understand, but she nodded quickly. Yes. She moved to the side, holding the package of biscuits tightly against her chest. Next came Zhou Yun. She held her daughter Xiaoyu's hand. 801. Zhou Yun. My daughter Xiaoyu and I. Two people. She quietly looked at Su Man. There was curiosity in her eyes, and something else, a trace of admiration. Su Man noticed. Her hand holding the pen became steadier. The registration continued. Dao Ba face controlled the crowd. The supplies were distributed, and Su Man sat behind the table, recording everyone. But at the same time, she was observing, especially the women she had mentioned to Lin Fei. The building was no longer just where she lived. At IT had become Lin Fei's territory, and as his head maid, she needed to understand everything happening inside it. When I closed the door of apartment 701, the tension outside finally broke. The hallway immediately became noisy. Dao Ba face raised the broken mop handle in his hand and started shouting. Line up. Anyone who causes trouble will receive nothing tomorrow. His two men helped keep order. The survivors who had already received supplies held onto their food like it was their last hope. Those still waiting pushed forward desperately. Everyone wanted the same thing, that a chance to stay alive. That a few younger men quickly approached Dao Ba face. Brother Dao Ba, we want to join the guard team. We can work. We're strong enough. Dao Ba face looked exhausted by the noise. He slammed the mop handle against the floor. Quiet. Do you think the boss leaving means there are no rules? His voice immediately brought everyone back to reality. They remembered the gunshots. They remembered what happened outside apartment 701. The crowd slowly calmed down. Soon, two lines formed. Point 1 for supplies, point 1 for the guard team. Dao Ba face finally managed to restore some order. Not long after, the door to apartment 701 opened again. Everyone turned to. Su Man stepped out. She was wearing the same black and white maid outfit. Unlike the survivors around her, she looked clean, rested, and well-fed. The difference was impossible to ignore. The people in the hallway had spent days fighting hunger and cold. She had stepped out from a warm room, from the place that represented safety. Dao Ba face immediately changed his attitude. The fierce expression disappeared. He walked over respectfully. Miss Su. Did the boss give new instructions? Su Man looked around the hallway. A strange feeling rose inside her. Not long ago, she had stood among these people. She had also been desperate. She had also needed someone to save her. But now, everyone was looking at her differently. Not because of who she was, because she represented the person behind that door. Lin Fei. She took a breath and tried to maintain the calm expression she had learned from him. The boss asked me to organize the registration. Registration? Dao Ba face immediately understood. Yes. I'll help. Su Man sat down beside the temporary table. She placed the paper and pen in front of her. For the first time in days, she wasn't the one waiting for judgment. She was the one collecting information. Name. Apartment number. Number of people in your household. One person after another stepped forward. Su Man recorded everything carefully. Residence. Family members. Living conditions. Potential usefulness. When Zhao Qian from apartment 502 came forward, Su Man looked up. The girl looked exhausted. Her face was pale from hunger, but Su Man could still see that she had once lived a comfortable life. Name and apartment. Zhao Qian. 502. One person. Su Man wrote it down. Then she paused. Wait here for now. Zhao Qian looked confused, but she nodded and moved aside. Next came Zhou Yun from apartment 801, but she held her daughter Xiaoyu's hand. Zhou Yun. 801. My daughter and I. Two people. Su Man recorded the information. She noticed the way Zhou Yun looked at her. There was caution, there was curiosity, and there was a small amount of admiration. Because compared to everyone else, Su Man looked like someone who had already found shelter in this frozen world. The registration continued. After finishing the resident list, Dao Ba Face returned with the first group selected for the guard team. Including Dao Ba Face and his original two companions, there were 12 people. Most were young men, who still had enough strength to work. Miss Su. Dao Ba Face handed over a wrinkled piece of paper. This is the list. Su Man glanced over it. Then she nodded. I'll report it to the boss. She collected both lists and returned to apartment 701 at the moment the door opened. Warmth surrounded her, but then she froze. Because inside the room, something impossible was happening. A metal knife was floating in front of Lin. It hovered in the air, slowly rotating. Unsteadily, but unmistakably, Su Man stopped breathing. The paper nearly slipped from her hand. The knife suddenly dropped. Lin Fei had noticed her arrival and lost focus. He turned around and smiled. You're back. Su Man slowly walked forward. Her eyes were still fixed on the knife. You can do that? Lin Fei smiled slightly. His answer was simple. Looks impressive, doesn't it? She stared at him. The man in front of her already possessed food, weapons, and control over the building. Now he had something even beyond that, at a power she could not explain. Her understanding of him changed again. Your ability is incredible. Her voice was quiet, partly amazement, partly respect. Lin Fei was satisfied with her reaction. Did you finish the registration? Su Man quickly remembered the purpose of her visit. She handed him the papers. Everyone in the building is recorded. This is the guard team list. 12 people. Lin Fei looked through the information. Su Man watched his expression. Then she lowered her voice. The people you asked me to observe, I paid attention to them. She explained what she had noticed. Zhao Qian from 502 is cautious and inexperienced. She is mainly focused on survival right now. Zhou Yun from 801 is more mature. Her biggest concern is her daughter. Lin Fei looked at her. She had changed. She was no longer only reacting to events. She was learning how to operate inside this new order. You've become quite good at this. Su Man lowered her head. Slightly. I just want to be useful. That answer made Lin Fei smile. Power changed people quickly. The world before the disaster was gone. Now everyone was trying to find a position where they could survive. Later, after reviewing the lists, I felt the exhaustion from practicing my new ability. Using that power was not effortless. That it drained my focus. I leaned back on the sofa. Come here. Su Man sat beside me. I rested my head and closed my eyes. Help me relax. She paused for a moment. Then she carefully placed her hands against my temples. Her movements were gentle and cautious. The room became quiet. The heater hummed softly. The cold world outside felt distant. For a brief moment, there was no struggle, no enemies, no threats. Only silence. Su Man continued the massage carefully. She knew the balance between us was unequal. She knew this calm depended on the protection I provided. But in a world where survival itself had become uncertain, even a temporary sense of safety had become something precious. That I continued enjoying lunch while Su Man served me. She carefully placed pieces of the tender braised beef into my bowl. Occasionally, she would even cool a piece before feeding it directly to me. I accepted the service naturally. As I chewed the beef, my mind was already on the next step. Tomorrow afternoon, I said after swallowing. Come with me to the top floor. Su Man's hand paused. She looked at me. To see that female streamer? Yeah. I took a sip of water. And to check out our new home. Su Man remembered the morning gathering. She didn't come down when everyone was called. She probably still has some supplies left and can survive for a while. I gave a faint laugh. So what? I leaned back against the sofa. She's staying in the best apartment in the building. She's occupying the place that will become ours. Shouldn't she at least pay something for that? My tone was calm that me. The top floor apartment was already mine. The current owner was simply someone temporarily occupying my future base. Man looked at my shameless confidence. For some reason, instead of feeling disgusted, she suddenly laughed at a small laugh. Almost involuntary. She quickly covered her mouth, but her eyes revealed a hint of amusement. In this world where strength decided everything. Maybe someone like me, someone powerful enough to ignore ordinary rules, was exactly the kind of person who could survive. That thought quietly appeared in her mind that I noticed her expression and reached out, lightly pinching her cheek. What are you laughing at? Am I wrong? Man immediately restrained her smile. No, she lowered her eyes. Master is right. Then she picked up another piece of food and offered it to me. After lunch, I rested on the sofa with Man for a while. My eyes were closed, but I wasn't completely asleep. I continued practicing my new ability mentally. Compared with the morning, my control over my power had improved slightly. After resting enough, I opened my eyes with a thought. I took out a new set of clothing from my storage space. It was a winter version of the maid outfit. The style remained black and white, but the materials were completely different. The skirt was made from thick wool fabric that a warm white apron came with it, along with a headpiece trimmed with soft fur. Beside it was a pair of thermal leggings designed to look like ordinary stockings, as well as insulated black leather boots. There were also thermal underwear, thick socks, and soft leather gloves. Change into this. I pushed the clothes towards Man. We're going outside later. Don't freeze. She looked at the outfit that a hint of surprise appeared in her eyes. Her previous clothes were fine indoors with the heater, but outside, they would offer almost no protection against the freezing weather. She hadn't expected me to prepare something like this. Thank you, master. She picked up the clothes and went to change. I also took out a thick black winter coat, warm pants, and snow boots. A few minutes later, Man walked out. I looked over. The thicker made outfit still showed her neat figure, while the thermal leggings kept her warm without sacrificing the appearance of the original style. The long boots made her look more capable. The cold weather clothing didn't hide her appearance. Instead, she looked like someone from a winter storybook. Not bad. I nodded. Then I walked toward the door. Get ready. Man understood immediately. She opened the door and spoke to the guard standing outside. Go call Dao Ba and two others. Yes, Miss Su. The guard quickly left. Not long after, Dao Ba arrived with two more members of the guard team. Boss. Miss Su. What's the order? His face was still glowing from the beef reward earlier. I looked at them. Let's go. Dao Ba froze. Boss, where are we going? I put my arm around Man and walked toward the stairs, to the top floor. To see our new home. Because the power was out, the elevator had stopped working. We could only take the stairs. The higher we went, the colder the air became. Dust and abandoned trash covered the stairways. Finally, we reached the 11th floor. Unlike the other floors, there was no long hallway here. Only one door, a thick wooden security door. The number plate read. The entire floor belonged to a single apartment. I stopped. Then I glanced at Dao Ba. He immediately understood. He stepped forward and knocked hard. Bang, bang, bang. Someone inside. Open the door. The sound echoed through the empty stairwell. No answer. Dao Ba's expression darkened. He knocked even harder. Didn't you hear me? Open the door. Don't blame me if I stop being polite. Still nothing. I narrowed my eyes. My enhanced perception detected movement behind the door. Someone was watching through the peephole. I stepped forward and moved Dao Ba aside. My voice was calm, but it carried enough pressure to pass through the thick door. I know you're watching me. You have 1 minute. Open the door. The moment I finished speaking, my thoughts moved. The steel rod held by one of the guards suddenly flew out of his hand. Before anyone could react, the heavy metal rod stopped in midair, suspended. Pointing directly at the security door, the rod trembled slightly. A low humming sound filled the stairwell. Dao Ba and the other two guards froze. Their eyes widened. They had seen me produce supplies from nowhere, but this was different. This was controlling objects with my mind. A heavy steel rod floating in the air like it had its own will. That was something beyond anything they could imagine. They instinctively stepped back. The fear and respect in their eyes deepened. Inside the apartment, a faint gasp could be heard. The person behind the door had clearly witnessed the scene through the peephole. The floating steel rod remained suspended, like a warning. like a countdown. The stairwell became completely silent. Only the faint vibration of the metal rod remained, and the sound of everyone holding there. Breath. 1 minute had begun. I heard the lock click, the heavy wooden security door slowly opened. A beautiful face appeared behind the narrow gap. The woman looked to be in her early 20s. Her skin was fair, her features delicate, and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses rested on her nose, giving her a calm, intellectual appearance. Even wrapped in a thick white winter coat, it was obvious she had a tall and slender figure. Unlike the exhausted residents downstairs, her complexion was still healthy. She looked nervous, but she wasn't carrying the same hopelessness caused by starvation. She first glanced toward Dao Ba and the others standing in the stairwell. The fear in her eyes was obvious. Then her gaze moved to Su Man beside me. The warm winter-made outfit, the clean appearance, and the respectful posture clearly caught her attention. Confusion and surprise flashed across her face that I didn't give her time to think. "Not going to invite us in?" My voice was calm, but the pressure behind it was clear. The steel rod floating beside me slowly tilted forward. The invisible threat intensified. The woman bit her lip. After several seconds of hesitation, she finally stepped aside. "Please come in." I turned to Dao Ba. "You three wait here." "Yes, boss." Dao Ba immediately nodded. He led the other two guards back toward the stairs and stood watch. They were curious, but none of them dared to interfere. I walked inside with Su Man. The moment I entered, I immediately understood why this place was so valuable. The living room was enormous. The ceiling was high. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city covered completely in snow. The interior followed a modern minimalist design, but every detail showed luxury. Leather sofas. A huge television, expensive furniture. Everything here was completely different from my cramped 701. And then I noticed the supplies. Several boxes sat open in the corner. Inside were instant noodles, biscuits, canned food, bottled water, and drinks. A considerable stockpile. No wonder she ignored the gathering downstairs. She really did have enough supplies to survive for quite a while. The three of us sat down. The woman chose the single-seat sofa. Her body remained tensed. Su Man and I sat on the larger couch. The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Chun Mingyao." Her voice was clear and composed. "I'm a graduate student at Minghua University. Before this happened, I did some live streaming during college and gained a little popularity. Because of my work habits, I usually stayed home a lot, so I developed the habit of storing extra supplies." She explained where her resources came from, but her eyes kept drifting toward me. I only nodded. I wasn't interested in her background. Then I stood up. Without saying anything, I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside was a frozen city, silent, dead. I looked over the snow-covered streets. From this position, I almost felt like I was already the owner of this place. Chun Mingyao was only a temporary guest. I left the conversation. To Su Man, she understood immediately. After taking a breath, she turned toward Chun Mingyao. "Miss Chun." Her tone was calm. "My name is Su Man." Chun Mingyao looked at her. Her eyes paused briefly on Su Man's outfit. The carefully prepared winter-made uniform, the clean appearance, the warmth and comfort she carried. "Miss Su." Chun Mingyao nodded. "You should already understand the situation." Su Man didn't waste time. She looked toward the supplies stacked in the corner. "You know what the outside world is like. You know how the people downstairs are surviving. These supplies may allow you to last another month or two. But after that," Chun Mingyao's lips tightened. She didn't answer, because that was exactly what frightened her the most. Su Man leaned forward slightly. "Following our boss is the only realistic choice right now. He can provide food, safety, and warmth." As she said that, her hand unconsciously touched the thick fabric of her clothes. Chun Mingyao noticed. She looked at my back by the window. Then she looked at Su Man's healthy complexion. Compared with herself, she had supplies, but every day was still filled with fear. Her heart was already struggling. "What does he want from me?" Her voice was dry. She wasn't naive. She knew nothing in this world came for free. Especially now. Su Man gave a faint smile. There was a trace of bitterness in it, and also something complicated. "What does he want?" She repeated. Her eyes swept across the luxurious apartment. "First, this apartment will belong to our boss." Chun Mingyao's face changed. Then Su Man continued. "As for you," she paused, "just like us. Obey. Help. Do what is expected. He won't mistreat people who cooperate. Chun Mingyao's fingers tightened around her coat. Help? Her eyes flickered. What kind of help? Su Man didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at me standing by the window, then back at Chun Mingyao. In this world, for women like us, what other choice is there besides relying on someone stronger? Her words landed heavily. Chun Mingyao lowered her head. Behind the gold-rimmed glasses, her eyes moved rapidly. Her mind was fighting itself. She knew Su Man was telling the truth. Rejecting me might mean death, or something even worse. Dao Ba and the others outside the door were proof enough. But accepting meant giving up the independence she had always valued. It meant becoming someone dependent on another person's protection. The conflict between dignity and survival tore at her, but Su Man didn't pressure her further. She simply waited. She had already experienced this decision herself. The room became quiet. Only the wind outside and my steady breathing could be heard. Time passed, slowly. The pressure continued building. Finally, Chun Mingyao raised her head. She looked at Su Man, then at me standing before the frozen city. The person controlling everything in the end. Survival won. Her voice was barely audible. What do I need to do? I heard the doubt hidden in Chun Mingyao's question. Standing by the window, I slowly turned around. For now, I don't need you to do anything. My voice remained calm that I looked at the woman sitting across from me. Su Man will teach you the rules here. You'll have time to adjust. Then I paused. But you need to prove your value soon. I don't keep people who only consume resources. Chun Mingyao took a deep breath. Something in her expression changed. The fear was still there, but her eyes became sharper. The look of a researcher trying to understand an unknown subject. I can accept that. Her voice was steadier now. But before that, I have a few questions. She looked directly at me. What exactly do you mean by strength? Is it only that trick you showed at the door? Trick? I repeated the word that a faint smile appeared on my face. The next moment, her expression changed completely. An invisible force wrapped around her. Her breathing stopped. Her body reacted before her mind could understand what was happening. Her hands reached toward her throat instinctively. But there was nothing there. Nothing visible. Nothing she could fight against. Yet the pressure was real. Her eyes widened behind the gold-rimmed glasses. The confidence she had carried disappeared instantly. This wasn't a trick. This was power. Absolute power. A few seconds later, I released the pressure. Chun Mingyao immediately bent forward, breathing heavily. She took in air desperately. Her face was pale, and her hands were trembling. She looked at me again. The curiosity in her eyes was gone. The hesitation was gone. Only shock and fear remained. I watched her quietly. My own people usually receive more patience from me. But that was your first warning. And your last. Chun Mingyao lowered her head. She nodded repeatedly. I understand. Her voice was weak. I'm sorry. I won't question you again. That brief demonstration had destroyed the last bit of doubt she held. Her supplies, her knowledge, her independence in front of a force beyond ordinary understanding. None of those things gave her real security. I was satisfied with her reaction. My tone softened slightly. Now, show us around. Let me see our future base. Chun Mingyao slowly stood up. Her legs were still unstable. She adjusted her crooked glasses and forced herself to calm down. Yes, please follow me. There was no hesitation anymore. She began introducing the apartment carefully. This is the living room. That side is the open kitchen. The equipment is complete. I followed behind her with Su Man beside me. The apartment was exactly what I expected. The master bedroom was enormous. It had a separate wardrobe room and a large bathroom. The 3 other bedrooms were spacious as well, each with its own bathroom. There was also a study. The shelves were filled with books, and a powerful computer sat on the desk. The most impressive part was the large balcony connected to the living room. Snow covered the entire surface, but the view was excellent. From here, I could see most of the silent neighborhood below. Not bad. I nodded. Compared with my old room in 701, this place was on another level. Chun Mingyao seemed to relax slightly after hearing my evaluation. At least for now, her apartment and her survival were safe. After the tour, we returned to the living room. I stood in front of the huge window again, but my thoughts were different this time. Before, I was only evaluating this place. Now, I was planning. This building, this neighborhood, Maybe even this frozen city. Perhaps all of it could eventually become part of my territory. Behind me stood Su Man and Chun Mingyao. Point two completely different women. Point two survivors who had chosen different paths. And below, there were dozens of people driven by fear and the hope of survival. Everything had started taking shape that I turned around. Su Man. Yes, master. Stay here. Teach her the rules. Su Man nodded. I understand. I didn't say anything else that I left the apartment. The door closed behind me. Inside the luxurious living room, only Su Man and Chun Mingyao remained. For a while, neither of them spoke. Chun Mingyao looked at Su Man, the clean clothes, the calm expression, the confidence that came from having protection. Then she looked at herself. She had food, she had shelter, but her future was still uncertain. The contrast was obvious. Su Man sat down on the sofa. Her attitude was more relaxed than when she stood beside me. Sit. Chun Mingyao followed her instruction. She placed her hands on her knees, still somewhat tense. My name is Su Man. She paused. I used to live next door. Apartment 702. My husband was a company executive. Before all this happened, I lived a comfortable life. A faint, complicated smile appeared on her face. Things changed quickly. Chun Mingyao looked surprised. She remembered that couple. They had once seemed like people from another world. Now, everyone had fallen into the same disaster. And you? Su Man looked at her. A graduate student from Minghua University. A former streamer. Your old life must have been very different. Chun Mingyao pushed her glasses up. The bitter smile appeared. Different? Maybe. I studied, streamed, talked with viewers, worried about popularity and income. It looked exciting, but it was exhausting. She paused. At least back then, I was free. Free, Su Man repeated quietly. Then she shook her head. That belongs to the past. Right now, being alive, having food, and staying warm, that is the closest thing to freedom we have. She looked directly at Chun Mingyao. Since you decided to stay, there are things you need to understand. Chun Mingyao straightened. She knew the real lesson had begun. First, Su Man raised one finger. Master's decisions are absolute here. You can ask questions, but once a decision is made, you follow it. Disobedience only creates danger. Chun Mingyao nodded slowly. Second, understand your position. Su Man looked down at her own outfit. Everyone here has a role. Our role is to help maintain this place, to contribute, to make sure this group survives. She paused. Those who contribute receive protection and resources. Chun Mingyao remained silent. She understood. Third, pay attention to yourself. Master values cleanliness, order, and efficiency. You need to adapt to the environment here. Su Man glanced at Chun Mingyao's heavy winter clothes. Your current clothing is practical, but later, you'll receive equipment more suitable for this place. Fourth, learn to observe. Don't just wait for instructions. A useful person notices problems before they happen. Managing supplies, organizing rooms, helping the group operate. These things matter. Finally, Su Man looked at her seriously. And the last thing, don't underestimate Master. He has the strength to protect this place, and the strength to destroy anyone who threatens it. She looked at Chun Mingyao. Look at me. Not long ago, I was just another person trapped by this disaster. Now I have food, warmth, and a place where I can survive. In this world, survival itself is already something precious. I could see that Chun Mingyao was struggling to process everything Su Man had told her. Every word had chipped away at the confidence she once had in herself. Before the apocalypse, she had her education, her career, her identity. She was someone who valued independence and control over her own life. But this frozen world had changed the rules. Survival was now the only thing that mattered. She adjusted her glasses and took a slow breath. I understand. Her voice was quiet but steadier than before. Thank you for telling me all this, Sujia. Su Man nodded, seemingly satisfied with her change in attitude. Good. If there's anything you don't understand later, you can ask me. She paused for a moment. Since you're here now, I guess we're on the same side. There was a subtle attempt at reassurance in her words. In a dangerous environment like this, having another person who could understand her situation was better than facing everything alone. While the two women continued talking, I finished arranging the relocation with Dao Ba and the others. After making sure everything was handled, I opened the heavy door of 1101 and returned to the living room. The moment I stepped inside, I saw Su Man walking over with Chun Mingyao. Master. Su Man greeted me naturally. Chun Mingyao stood beside her, head slightly lowered that it looked like she had forced herself to make a difficult decision. Master. Her voice was barely audible. The moment the word left her mouth, her face turned red. She immediately looked away, unable to meet my eyes that I had to admit. Hearing someone like Chun Mingyao say that title was rather satisfying, but I didn't show it that I simply nodded. I stepped forward and took her hand from Su Man. Her fingers were slightly cold, and I could feel a faint tremble up close. I noticed something different about her. Unlike Su Man's familiar scent, Chun Mingyao carried a cleaner, more academic feeling. A faint fragrance mixed with the atmosphere of someone who spent years surrounded by books and classrooms. My eyes fell on the gold-rimmed glasses resting on her face that I reached out and removed them. Without the glasses, her expression changed slightly. The sharp, intellectual distance she usually carried softened. Because of her poor eyesight, her gaze became somewhat unfocused, making her appear much less guarded than before. Chun Mingyao instinctively blinked. The blurry world made her uneasy. She wanted to reach for her glasses, but she stopped herself. She still hadn't fully adjusted to her new situation that I placed the glasses on the table. Then I waved my hand. Two sets of clothing appeared on the sofa. One was a thicker, winterized version of Su Man's black and white outfit. The other was a gray professional suit with a white blouse, suitable for office work. Choose one. I looked at her calmly. I give people with useful skills some advantages. I pointed toward the professional outfit. If you choose this, you'll handle paperwork and management, organizing information about the residents, managing supplies, keeping records. I looked at her. Can you do that? The moment she heard those words, her eyes lit up. It was the first time since entering this room that I saw genuine confidence return to her expression. I can. She answered quickly. My undergraduate major was business administration, statistics, reports, resource planning. I studied all of that. She paused, then added more cautiously. I should be able to handle it. Compared with the other option, this role gave her something she desperately needed, the sense of usefulness, the position, a reminder that she was more than someone simply waiting to be protected. I smiled slightly. Good. Then those responsibilities will be yours. Before she could respond, Dao Ba's careful voice came from the doorway. Boss, everything has been moved upstairs. Where should we put it? I didn't turn around. Bring it in. Put everything in the corner for now. Yes, boss. Dao Ba immediately began directing the others. Boxes of supplies from 701 were carried into the spacious living room. After that, I pointed toward Chun Mingyao. Dao Ba. He immediately straightened. Yes, boss. This is Chun Mingyao. I continued. From now on, she'll be responsible for personnel and supplies. The security team's logistics, the residents' food distribution records, all of it goes through her. Dao Ba froze for a second. Then his expression changed instantly. Yes? Understood. He turned toward Chun Mingyao and nodded repeatedly. Chun manager, if you need anything, just tell me. I'll cooperate completely. He might not have seen her clearly, but he understood one thing. Anyone personally appointed by me was someone he could not afford to offend. Chun Mingyao looked at him in silence. Her emotions were complicated. She felt nervous about the responsibility, relieved that she had avoided the worst possible outcome, and strangely affected by the respect she was receiving before the apocalypse. She had experienced attention as a streamer, but this was different. This respect came from her new position inside my organization. A position she gained by adapting to this new world. I waved my hand. That's enough. Go arrange patrols. Yes, boss. Dao Ba immediately left. The room became quiet again. I looked at Su Man. Take her to the bathroom. I pointed toward the professional outfit. Let her clean up and change. Yes, master. Su Man walked over and gently supported Chun Mingyao. Come with me. Chun Mingyao instinctively reached toward the table where her glasses were. I picked them up first. After you finish. Her hand stopped. She lowered her head. Yes. With Su Man guiding her, she slowly walked toward the bathroom. Without her glasses, the world around her was blurred. And perhaps that was fitting, because her future was still unclear. All she could do now was follow the path ahead of her. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the community below. From the 11th floor, I had a clear view of the entire courtyard. The neighboring buildings, Building 1 and Building 3, stood like two silent giants covered in layers of snow. Most of the windows were completely dark, with no signs of life. But something caught my attention. The snowfall seemed lighter than before. The thick curtain of snow that had buried the city for days had weakened. The wind had also lost some of its former intensity. So the worst part might be over. I rubbed my chin, thinking, maybe the peak of this extreme cold spell had already passed, and things would gradually stabilize. But even if the snow stopped, it didn't mean normal life would return. Temperatures were still far below freezing. The power grid, transportation, and basic infrastructure had already collapsed. Ordinary people couldn't survive outside for long. However, that also meant an opportunity that my eyes moved toward the two silent buildings across from me. Building 1. Building 3, even Building 2, the place beneath my feet, wasn't completely under my control yet. Territory, population, resources, those were the foundations needed to build something bigger. Hiding inside this apartment forever wasn't my goal. That if I wanted to survive whatever came next, I needed more people, more supplies, and a stronger organization. The other two buildings would eventually become part of my territory. That was the direction I needed to move toward. With the system and my awakened ability, I had the confidence to make it happen. I looked over the snow-covered buildings outside, already beginning to plan my next steps. While I was thinking, Su Man was helping Chun Mingyao get settled in the master bathroom. The portable bathtub and heating equipment were already prepared. Compared with the normal world, this was nothing special. But in the current apocalypse, having warm water was already a luxury. Steam slowly filled the room, driving away the cold. Take a bath first, Su Man said. Gently. The master likes things clean and organized. Chun Mingyao hesitated for a moment before nodding. She removed her heavy winter clothes and stepped closer to the warm water. The tension she had carried since entering this apartment slowly eased. Everything still felt unfamiliar. The rules, the people, her own uncertain future. But at least here, she wasn't freezing in an empty apartment waiting for death. Su Man helped her arrange her hair and quietly explained more about life in the apartment. Don't worry too much, Su Man said. The master values ability. If you can prove that you're useful, you'll have your own position here. Chun Mingyao lowered her eyes. That's why I chose the management role. Her voice was quiet. I don't want to become someone who can only wait for others to decide my fate. Su Man looked at her for a moment. Then she nodded. That's actually a good thing. She understood that feeling. Before the apocalypse, both of them had been people with their own lives and identities. Now, everything had changed. The only thing they could do was find a way to adapt. Chun Mingyao leaned against the side of the bathtub, lost in thought. She still didn't know whether her choice was right, but she knew one thing: that in this new world, ability and usefulness mattered more than the old rules. And right now, Lin Fei was the person holding the strongest hand. When the bathroom door opened later, I turned around. Chun Mingyao had changed into the professional outfit I prepared for her. The gray suit fit her well, giving her a capable and refined appearance. Her hair was still slightly damp, and the gold-rimmed glasses rested on her face again. But compared with before, the cold distance she carried had faded. She looked more like someone who had accepted the reality around her. Master. Su Man greeted me first. Chun Mingyao paused briefly. Then she lowered her head. Master. Her voice was quiet, but she managed to say it. I looked at the two women in front of me. One was already familiar with my rules. The other was still adapting. Different personalities, different backgrounds. But both understood the importance of survival in this world. I waved them over. Su Man walked forward naturally. Chun Mingyao hesitated for a moment before following. I sat down on the sofa and looked at the new arrangement of my base. A powerful assistant. A capable manager. A growing group of survivors downstairs. Things were finally starting to take shape. Chun Mingyao sat carefully, still somewhat unfamiliar with the environment. She was no longer the confident streamer and graduate student from before, but she wasn't helpless either. She had chosen a path, and now, she needed to prove her value. Outside, the frozen city remained silent, but inside this apartment, a new order was beginning to form. I could feel the difference between the two women beside me. Su Man had already adapted to my presence and my rules. Chun Mingyao was different. She was still tense, still cautious, still trying to understand this new reality. That contrast told me one thing. She was still adjusting. I looked at the professional outfit she had chosen and nodded. Not bad. My voice was calm. This suits you. Chen Mingyao lowered her eyes slightly. Thank you, master. She still sounded uncomfortable saying that title, but she no longer resisted it. Su Man noticed her nervousness and gently patted her hand. It was a small gesture, but I could tell the two of them were beginning to form a connection. That was useful. That a stable group needed more than just fear. It needed people who could work together. I turned my attention back toward the window. Outside, the frozen city stretched endlessly beneath the snow. The buildings were silent, the streets were empty, but I knew this calm wouldn't last forever. This was only the beginning. The sky gradually darkened. I looked toward the kitchen. Su Man. She immediately looked over. Prepared dinner. Yes, master. She answered naturally and walked toward the kitchen. After she left, I looked at Chen Mingyao. She was still sitting beside me, clearly unsure how to behave. I pulled out the information I had been thinking about. By the way, I glanced toward the direction of Building 3. I heard there are 2 female students from Minghua University living there. Twins, right? Chen Mingyao thought for a moment. Then she nodded. You mean the Chu sisters? Her expression became slightly more focused. They're quite famous at Minghua. Their names are Chu Yuqing and Chu Yufei. They're both economics students. She adjusted her glasses. Because of their grades and appearance, many students consider them campus celebrities. I listened carefully. Do you know where they live? Chen Mingyao shook her head. I only know they're in Building 3. I don't remember the exact floor. I nodded. That was enough for now. A neighboring building. Useful information, potential resources, potential people. Everything mattered in this world. Keep paying attention to information like this. I looked at her. You'll be responsible for organizing intelligence related to the residents. Chen Mingyao immediately understood. This was her role, not just managing supplies. Gathering information would also become part of her responsibilities. Understood. She stood up. I'll help Su Man with dinner. After the two of them went into the kitchen, I walked to the center of the living room. It was time to organize the resources I had accumulated. I focused my thoughts. The next moment, boxes began appearing throughout the empty space. Food, water, daily necessities. Everything I had stored from previous system rewards appeared one after another. Stacks of compressed food, bottled water, instant meals, rice, flour. Vacuum-packed meat, fresh vegetables, and fruit. Ordinary people in the apocalypse. This wasn't just supplies. This was survival itself. I looked over everything and began calculating. Before this, I had only been collecting resources for myself. But now things were different. I had a base. I had people. I had responsibilities. Management had to follow. These supplies needed proper records. Tomorrow, Chen Mingyao could begin organizing everything. Storage, distribution, inventory. All of it needed a system. I didn't intend to personally handle every small matter. If I gathered people only to do everything myself, then what was the point? I also thought about the people downstairs. The girl from 502 to the mother and daughter from 801. They could become useful members of the group. The apartment had enough space. They could start with basic tasks and gradually integrate. A stable base needed different kinds of people. Not everyone had to fight. Some people were valuable because they could organize, maintain, and support. In the kitchen, Chen Mingyao was experiencing another shock. She watched Su Man take out fresh vegetables and meat. Things that should have been impossible to obtain in this frozen world. How? Chen Mingyao stared at the ingredients. Where did these come from? Su Man smiled. I was surprised the first time too. She continued preparing the food calmly. That machine is a multifunction cooking device. You put ingredients inside, select a mode, and it handles the rest. She pointed toward the equipment around the apartment. This is the portable heater. That one is the energy stove. These are all things the master provided. Chen Mingyao listened carefully. She memorized every detail because she understood something important. Learning these things was part of proving her value. She had already lost the old world, but she didn't want to lose herself completely. If she could manage resources, organize people, and help build this place, then she would not simply be someone protected by another person. She would have a position. A purpose. Outside, night slowly covered the frozen city. The snowfall had weakened compared with before, but the cold remained. Inside the 11th floor apartment, warm lights illuminated the room. Food filled the air with its aroma. And for the first time since the apocalypse began, this small group was beginning to function like something more than scattered survivors. The foundation was forming. The fourth floor looked completely different from the world above. Inside one of the apartments temporarily occupied by the security team, the air was filled with the rich aroma of meat that of battered gas. Stove sat in the corner, supporting a large pot. Inside was the beef bone soup Lin Fei had rewarded them with earlier. The broth had turned pale and thick after hours of simmering. With pieces of meat still clinging to the bones, in a world where electricity and gas had become luxuries, the remaining fuel they found was more valuable than gold. Several off-duty guards sat around the table, staring at the pot without blinking. They had eaten compressed food for days. To them, this simple bowl of hot soup felt like a feast. Outside the half-closed door, some residents quietly watched from the hallway. They smelled the meat. They saw the warmth, but no one dared approach. Dalbang stirred the soup with a spoon, unable to hide his satisfaction. See this? He looked at the others. This is what happens when you follow the right person. Before this, we followed Wang Chong and nearly starved. Now we have hot food. The guards immediately nodded. Brother Dao is right. Boss Lin knows how to take care of his people. We'll follow him. Bao Balang put down the spoon and his expression became serious. Enjoy the meal, then get back to your posts. Don't forget who gave us this chance. If anyone gets careless during patrol and causes trouble for the boss, don't blame me for being ruthless. Everyone immediately straightened. They knew exactly what kind of person Lin Fei was. The comfort they had now could disappear just as quickly if they failed. Meanwhile, on the 11th floor, 1101 was a completely different world. Warm lights illuminated the spacious apartment. The clean dining table was prepared with 3 carefully cooked steaks. Fresh vegetables surrounded them. There were tomatoes, lettuce, cucumbers, and other ingredients that had become extremely rare after the disaster. I sat at the head of the table, feeling relaxed. With a thought, I brought out a bottle of red wine and 3 glasses. Today, Meng Yao officially joined us. I poured the wine. Consider this a small celebration. Su Man looked at the table quietly. For a moment, she seemed to remember the world before the apocalypse. Restaurants, comfortable evenings, a normal life. Then reality returned, and with it came a feeling she understood better than anyone. Relief. She knew how different her life had become. Compared with the hunger and cold outside, this apartment was almost another world. She glanced at Chun Mingyao beside her. The difference between them was obvious. Su Man had already adapted. Mingyao was still trying to understand everything. Chun Mingyao, meanwhile, looked completely stunned. Steak, salad, wine. A warm apartment. Everything in front of her felt unreal. Only days ago, she had been worrying about whether her supplies would last. Now she was sitting at a table like this. The contrast was almost impossible to accept. But one thing became clearer to her. I possessed resources far beyond what ordinary survivors could imagine. And following me meant entering a completely different reality. She was still conflicted, but the hesitation inside her had weakened. Don't just stare. I smiled slightly. Eat. Thank you, master. Su Man began first. Meng Yao followed her example, carefully picking up the knife and fork. The steak was tender. The flavor was better than anything she remembered from expensive restaurants. She ate slowly, occasionally taking a sip of wine. The entire experience felt disconnected from the frozen world outside. During dinner, I asked about her plans for managing supplies. Meng Yao immediately became more serious. She discussed inventory records, distribution methods, and how to organize information. Her confidence returned when talking about something she understood. That was exactly why I had chosen her. Everyone had a role. Strength was not the only useful ability. After dinner, I rested on the large sofa. The exhaustion of the day slowly faded. Meng Yao stood behind me. She hesitated for a moment before placing her hands on my shoulders. She was clearly inexperienced. Her movements were awkward, sometimes too light, sometimes too heavy. But she was focused. She wanted to prove she could contribute. That Su Man sat nearby, helping in her own familiar way. She had already learned how to take care of the small details around me. Watching the two of them, I found it difficult not to compare my current life with my old one. Before the apocalypse, I had been an ordinary person, working every day, worrying about money, living according to other people's expectations. Now, I had a secure base, unlimited resources, people who depended on my decisions. The world had changed completely. I looked towards Su Man. She had adapted faster than anyone. Not because she was weak, because she understood one simple truth that in this new world, survival required accepting reality. My gaze shifted to Chun Mingyao. She was still struggling, still holding on to pieces of her old identity, but she was learning, and that made her valuable. The night continued quietly. Outside was a frozen wasteland. Inside was warmth, food, and the beginning of a new order. I had just begun enjoying the rare, quiet moment when the interruption came. A knock sounded at the door. "Boss." The guard outside spoke quickly, trying to keep his voice low but unable to hide his urgency. "Brother Dao found an emergency situation downstairs. He said you need to handle it immediately." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. I frowned. Not because of the problem itself, because someone had disturbed the small amount of peace I had finally built. I withdrew my hand and took a slow breath, forcing myself to calm down. "Got it. I'll be there." Su Man immediately understood. She adjusted herself and returned to her usual composed expression. I looked at both of them. "You two go rest in the master bedroom first. If you're tired, sleep. Don't wait for me." After saying that, I stood up. With a thought, the heavy coat hanging nearby floated through the air and landed in my hands. The ability was becoming more natural. I put it on and walked toward the door. When I stepped outside 11:01, the relaxed expression disappeared. Only coldness remained. The guard waiting outside immediately straightened. "Tell me what happened." As we walked toward the stairs, he quickly explained. "Brother Dao was patrolling the 4th floor. He found someone trying to sneak into the room where we stored supplies. He caught him before he could take anything. Brother Dao didn't dare make the decision himself, so he asked you to handle it." My eyes narrowed. Soon after establishing the rules, someone had already tested the limits. Offering food and protection was only one side of control. The other side was fear. Some people only understood consequences. When I reached the 4th floor, I immediately saw the situation. Several residents were gathered in the hallway. Dao Ba and several guards were holding down a thin man. The man looked terrified. "Boss." Dao Ba immediately stepped forward and bowed. The moment the residents saw me, the entire hallway became quiet. Everyone stepped back instinctively. I looked at the man on the ground. "Is he the one who tried to steal?" "Yes." Dao Ba's voice carried anger. "We caught him forcing open the storage room. He knew the rules and still did it." The thin man panicked. He crawled forward. "Boss, please. I was just too hungry. I made a mistake. I won't do it again." Dao Ba kicked him away before he could get close. I didn't respond. Instead, I looked around. Everyone was watching, waiting. They wanted to see what kind of leader I would become. A weak leader would be challenged. A careless leader would lose control. This was the moment where the rules became real. I slowly raised my hand. The next second, the man on the floor suddenly lifted into the air. The entire hallway froze. Some people gasped. Others covered their mouths. They had heard about my ability, but seeing it directly was different. The man struggled desperately, grabbing at his throat. His feet kicked uselessly in the My expression remained calm. I controlled the pressure carefully. Not enough to kill him immediately. Enough for everyone watching to understand. Stealing from me had consequences. After several seconds, I released the force. The man dropped heavily to the ground. He collapsed, coughing violently. The hallway remained silent. I looked at everyone. "Listen carefully. My rules only need to be said once. Follow them, and you get food. Follow them, and you survive." My voice became colder. "Break them, then this is what happens." No one moved. No one even dared breathe loudly. I continued. "From now on, stealing, fighting, or causing trouble will not be tolerated. Anyone who breaks the rules will be dealt with." I turned toward Dao Ba. "Strengthen patrols. I don't want to see this happen again." Dao Ba immediately nodded. "Yes, boss." "Understood." I looked at the frightened residents one last time. They understood now. This place had order, and that order belonged to me. Without saying anything else, I turned and walked back upstairs. Behind me, the 4th floor remained completely silent. The fear I left behind on the 4th floor had already taken root. Compared with simply handing out food, that display of power had been far more effective. Everyone now understood one thing. In this building, the rules were real, and I was the one who enforced them. When I returned to the 11th floor and opened the door to 11:01, the warmth inside immediately separated me from the cold and darkness outside. The master bedroom door was slightly open. Inside, Su Man and Chen Mingyao were still awake. Su Man had already cleaned up and changed into a comfortable night dress. Mingyao was still wearing her professional outfit, though she had removed her coat and shoes. She sat on the bed with her knees pulled close, lost in thought. The moment they heard me enter, both of them looked up. Su Man's eyes were calm and obedient. Mingyao's expression was much more complicated. There was embarrassment, respect, and a trace of fear caused by what had happened downstairs. I took off my coat and casually placed it aside. Then I walked to the bed. The anger from earlier slowly faded. What remained was the satisfaction of having everything under control. Nothing serious. I spoke casually. I just dealt with a mouse that didn't understand the rules. I lifted the blanket and lay down. Naturally, I pulled both women closer. Su Man immediately relaxed against me. Mingyao's body stiffened at first, but after remembering what had happened downstairs and remembering the strength I possessed, she eventually stopped resisting and allowed herself to relax. I closed my eyes. The apocalypse was not just about strength. It was about knowing when to reward people and when to make them afraid. Tonight, I had shown them the consequences. Tomorrow, I would show them the benefits. The next morning, sunlight entered through the huge windows. I was still asleep. Then my arm instinctively rested around the person beside me. Chen Mingyao woke first. She felt the warmth and strength around her waist. Her face became slightly red. She moved a little, but she didn't dare pull away. On the other side, Su Man also woke up. She sat up and looked toward the window. Then surprise appeared on her face. "Master, look, the snow seems to have stopped." Her voice woke me. I slowly opened my eyes. Following her gaze, I looked outside. The endless storm from the previous days was gone. Only a few tiny snowflakes drifted lazily through the gray sky. The visibility had improved significantly. I could clearly see the courtyard below. The entire community was covered in thick snow. The neighboring buildings stood silent and white, like frozen towers. The blizzard had weakened. That was an important signal. The extreme weather might be entering a new phase. The temperature was still deadly, but at least now, the outside world could be observed. I looked down at Mingyao, who was still tense beside me. I deliberately tightened my arm slightly. She let out a quiet, startled sound and immediately froze. I smiled, then released her. I sat up. "Help me get dressed." Su Man immediately moved. She had already become familiar with these routines. Mingyao hesitated for a moment, then followed her. Her movements were still awkward, but she tried her best. One woman was experienced and natural. The other was nervous and unfamiliar. Yet both were helping me prepare for the day. I had to admit, the feeling was satisfying. After getting dressed, I returned to the window. With the snow easing, my vision extended much farther. That meant it was time to think about the next step. The two women prepared breakfast: hot milk, fried eggs, toast, fresh fruit. Simple things. But in this frozen world, they were luxury. I sat at the table. Su Man stood beside me, helping prepare the meal. Mingyao carefully held the milk cup, still adapting to her new position. I had only eaten a few bites when a voice came from outside. "Boss." Dao Ba sounded urgent. "Are you there? There's something happening downstairs. You may need to see it yourself." I wiped my mouth and answered, "Come in." Dao Ba entered. His expression was unusual. He quickly glanced at the two women beside the table. Then he immediately focused again. "Boss." The patrol team on the first floor discovered something strange. Something at the entrance of the community. I frowned. "Explain." Dao Ba swallowed. "You remember when the disaster first started? Several people tried to leave and search for rescue. They didn't make it far. They froze to death near the entrance." I nodded. I remembered. Their bodies had been buried beneath the snow ever since. Dao Ba's expression became strange. Then this morning, the patrol members saw those bodies. They were moving. The room went silent. Su Man and Chen Mingyao immediately turned pale. They instinctively moved closer to me. I narrowed my eyes. Dead bodies. Moving. Were they some kind of frozen corpse? Or something else? A thought flashed through my mind. Could this apocalypse have changed more than just the weather? Could there be something even worse hiding beneath the snow? I quickly suppressed the surprise. Panic was useless, especially now. Understood. I stood up. Then I gave instructions. "Su Man, go bring Zhao Qian from the 5th floor and Zhou Yun with her daughter from the 8th floor. Have them help with cleaning and organizing first, and explain the rules." Then I looked at Chen Mingyao. "Mingyao, You stay here. Count and organize all the supplies we brought from 701. I want a complete inventory. Both women nodded. Yes, master. After arranging everything, I looked at Dao Ba. Let's go. I want to see what those things really are. Because whatever was waiting outside, it meant this apocalypse was far more complicated than I originally thought. That I walked toward the stairs. Behind me, the heavy door of 1101 slowly closed. That I left the room with Dao Ba and headed downstairs. Behind me, the people in 1101 were already beginning their own tasks. Su Man and Chun Mingyao had their roles. Now it was time to understand this new threat. The moment we entered the lower floors, the temperature dropped sharply. Cold air flowed through the stairwell. Tell me exactly what happened. I walked quickly while asking, how many of those things are there? Dao Ba followed closely behind. Boss, the patrol team saw around 4 or 5. They're wandering near the entrance of the community. Their movements are slow, but they're definitely moving. His voice became lower. They look exactly like frozen corpses, except they can walk. My expression became serious. Dead bodies moving. This was no longer just a natural disaster. When we reached the second floor, 2 guards immediately came over. Boss, Brother Dao. Dao Ba quickly explained. After we discovered them, I blocked the stairs leading to the first floor with furniture and debris. I also moved the remaining residents from the first floor into empty rooms above. Those things are too strange. I was worried they might break in. I looked at him. That I hadn't expected this from Dao Ba. Usually, he seemed like someone who relied on intimidation and violence. But when something truly happened, he had reacted quickly. He had secured the area, moved civilians, prepared defenses. Not bad. Dao Ba noticed my expression and immediately became nervous. Boss, I acted without waiting for your order. You did the right thing. I interrupted him. You reacted quickly. You handled it well. Dao Ba froze. Then excitement appeared on his face. Thank you, boss. I'll do better next time. I ignored his reaction. Take me somewhere I can see them clearly. Yes, boss. Dao Ba led me to an apartment on the second floor. The window faced directly toward the entrance of the community. The view was excellent. I carefully moved aside the thick curtain. Then I looked down. There they were, 4 or 5 human-shaped figures wandering through the snow. They were covered in ice. Their clothes were torn. Their exposed skin had turned a lifeless gray-blue color. Their movements were stiff, slow. Like broken puppets. One of them had half of its face collapsed. The frozen flesh had already deteriorated. Yet it was still moving, still searching. Snow corpses. Or perhaps zombies adapted to extreme cold. My eyes narrowed. I watched carefully. They weren't moving randomly. They seemed to react to signs of life. A small frozen bird suddenly fell into the snow nearby. The moment it moved, every snow corpse turned in that direction. Their heads rotated almost at the same time. A strange sound came from their throats, like ice grinding against ice. They slowly moved toward the bird. Their bodies were stiff. Their speed was terrible, but the hunger and instinct behind those movements were unmistakable. They were attracted to life. I needed to test their strength. My eyes scanned the room. In the corner was an old wooden bench. With a thought, it floated into my hand. Dao Ba and the 2 guards still looked amazed by my ability, but this time, their attention was focused on the snow corpses below. I weighed the bench. Then I aimed at the closest one. I threw it. The bench flew through the air, but my calculation was slightly off. It curved downward. It looked like it would land several meters away from the target. Dao Ba and the guards thought the test had failed. Then something strange happened. The falling bench suddenly stopped as if it had hit an invisible wall. It froze in midair. Everyone stared. Before they could react, the bench suddenly changed direction. My psychic power grabbed it. The wooden bench accelerated, faster than before, like a projectile fired from a cannon. It slammed directly into another snow corpse nearby. Bang! The impact echoed. Wood splintered. The snow corpse was thrown backward and crashed into the snow. For a moment, Dao Ba looked relieved. It worked, but then his expression changed. The snow corpse moved again. It hadn't been destroyed. Its limbs twitched violently. Its body moved in an unnatural way. Then it released a sharp, terrifying sound. Not a human scream. Something colder, something wrong. The next moment, it pushed against the ground. Its body rose like a spider. Then it began crawling. Fast, much faster than before. Its arms and legs moved together. It rushed directly toward the entrance of Building 2. Bang! 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 Heavy impacts soon came from below. The snow corpse was attacking the entrance door, again and again. Its shrill cry echoed through the building. My expression darkened. Dao Ba and the two guards were completely pale. This thing was different from ordinary zombies. It hadn't been weakened. It had been angered. And after becoming aggressive, it became faster, stronger, more dangerous. The zombies from movies were predictable, slow, simple. But these snow corpses had changed because of this frozen world. The cold had not only destroyed civilization. It had created something new, something much worse. I looked down at the creature still attacking the door. Looks like this weather brought more than just freezing temperatures. My voice was calm, but my eyes became colder. The real apocalypse may have only just begun. For the first time in a while, I felt genuine pressure, but instead of fear, another emotion rose inside me, a desire to become stronger, no matter what appeared in this world, no matter what monsters were born from this disaster. I would survive, and I would stand above them all. I turned away from the window, my expression becoming serious. The heavy impacts from below continued. The snow corpse was still throwing itself against the entrance door, each dull collision echoing through the building like a warning that I needed to make arrangements immediately. Dao Ba. My voice cut through the tense silence on the second floor. Yes, boss. He straightened at once. Take more people and find whatever furniture you can. Tables, cabinets, anything sturdy. I pointed toward the stairs. Block the staircase between the first and second floors. Make it secure. My tone was firm. I don't want those things getting up here. Yes, boss. I'll handle it. Dao Ba immediately accepted the order. I continued. Also, send 2 smart people with a few others to search every occupied room in the building. My eyes swept over him. Collect anything useful. Binoculars, flashlights, knives, axes, metal pipes. Anything that can be used as a weapon or help us survive. Don't leave anything behind. All collected items go to the 11th floor. Chen Mingyao will record everything. I deliberately emphasized her new responsibility. Then my voice turned colder. And tell everyone in this building something. They don't get to sit around waiting for food. Moving supplies, reinforcing defenses, helping with construction, everyone contributes. I paused. Anyone who thinks they can hide away and do nothing. I didn't finish the sentence that I didn't need to. The meaning was clear. I don't support useless people. Dao Ba's expression tightened. Understood, boss. I'll make sure everyone knows. I looked at him again. And your security team. Keep them disciplined. When there's nothing urgent, train them. Practice standing, practice fighting, practice using their weapons. I pointed toward the first floor. You saw that thing downstairs. From now on, we'll be dealing with creatures like that. I don't want my people freezing up the moment they actually face one. Dao Ba's face became serious. Boss, don't worry. I'll train them properly. They won't embarrass you. I nodded. Then I left him behind and walked back upstairs. When I reached the 11th floor, the guard standing outside immediately straightened. Boss. I nodded and opened the door to 1101. Warm air surrounded me instantly. The contrast was almost unreal. Outside was cold, fear, and death. Inside was warmth and the faint scent of food. In the living room, Su Man and Chen Mingyao were standing together. In front of them were 3 newcomers. Zhao Qian from the 5th floor, Zhou Yun from the 8th floor, and her daughter, Xiao Yu. They were clearly being introduced to the rules of this place. Zhou Yun held her daughter close. She looked exhausted, and there was still some uneasiness in her eyes, but she listened carefully to everything Su Man explained. Xiao Yu looked around curiously. The warm room, the clean furniture, and the 2 women wearing unusual but elegant outfits were all completely different from what she had seen in recent days. Zhao Qian stood quietly beside them. Her hands gripped the edge of her clothes nervously. She looked pale and frightened, like someone afraid of making even the smallest mistake. The moment I entered, everyone turned toward me. Su Man and Chen Mingyao immediately stopped speaking. Juan. They greeted me naturally. Zhou Yun quickly pulled her daughter closer, then lowered her head. Master. Her voice was quiet. Zhao Qian looked even more nervous. Master. Only Xiao Yu didn't say anything. She simply looked at me with wide, curious eyes. My gaze passed over everyone before stopping on the girl beside Zhou Yun. She was still young, around 18, that her face carried traces of her mother's features, though hunger and exhaustion had taken away some of her color. But she was clearly just a frightened survivor caught in a terrible situation that I walked over. Zhou Yun immediately became tense that I could feel her protectiveness toward her daughter, that I didn't blame her that I in this world. Every parent would react the same way that I crouched slightly and spoke in a calmer tone. Don't call me that. Xiao Yu looked at me. Just call me Brother Lin. She hesitated. Then, after looking at her mother and seeing no objection, she quietly said, Brother Lin. I nodded. That's right. Her nervous expression relaxed slightly. I turned back to Su Man and Chun Ming Yao. Show them around. Arrange rooms. Explain what they need to know. The two women nodded. Yes, master. I walked toward the large window again. Outside, the snow had almost stopped, but the world below had changed. Those wandering snow corpses were still there. A new threat, a new rule. The plans I had made before needed adjustment. But one thing had become even clearer. Strength was the only true guarantee of survival. Resources mattered. Numbers mattered. But without power, everything could disappear overnight. I looked at the frozen city outside. The road ahead was becoming more dangerous, but at the same time, it was becoming more interesting. Behind me, a new group of survivors was beginning to adapt to this shelter. A new order was slowly taking shape, and I intended to be the one controlling it. Lin Fei stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his figure outlined against the gray world outside. The city remained silent. Only a few tiny snowflakes drifted down from the sky, but everyone's mindset had changed. Those wandering snow corpses were like a blade hanging above their heads, reminding them that survival required far more than simply enduring the cold. Su Man was the first to move. She turned toward Zhou Yun, Xiao Yu, and Zhao Qian with a calm but firm smile. Don't just stand there. Come with me. I'll show you around and introduce you to where you'll be staying. Her eyes briefly passed over them before stopping on Xiao Yu, who was still instinctively protected behind her mother. As long as you follow the rules here, you won't go hungry or freeze. The master treats obedient people well. Chun Mingyao stepped forward as well. She adjusted her glasses and tried to keep her tone professional, almost like she was conducting a workplace orientation. Daily responsibilities mainly include keeping the living area clean, helping prepare meals, and completing tasks assigned by the master. The exact division of work will be arranged later. Zhou Yun held her daughter's hand tightly and nodded. We understand. We'll do our best. She was an intelligent woman. She knew that when someone was under another person's roof, they had to lower their head, especially in a world like this. Being able to bring her daughter into a warm and secure shelter already made her luckier than most people still struggling downstairs. Zhao Qian looked even more nervous. She secretly glanced toward my back near the window before quickly lowering her head again. I'll work hard too. Su Man nodded in satisfaction. Then she led the three newcomers toward the inner rooms. This is one of the guest bedrooms. It's not as large as the master bedroom, but it's clean and comfortable. For now, you'll stay here. She opened the door. Inside were two neatly arranged single beds and a private bathroom. Compared with their previous freezing rooms, this place was almost another world. Xiao Yu looked around curiously. For the first time in days, a little light returned to her eyes. Mom, it's so warm here. Zhou Yun's heart tightened. She gently touched her daughter's hair, but said nothing. After settling their rooms, Su Man and Chun Mingyao continued showing them around. The kitchen, the guest bathroom, the storage areas. They also explained basic rules. What could not be touched, what needed permission, how to keep quiet, how to maintain order. Throughout the entire process, I never turned around. It might have seemed like I didn't care. But everyone could feel my presence, like an invisible pressure filling the room. The newcomers didn't dare relax for even a moment. Meanwhile, downstairs, Dao Ba moved quickly. He personally led several strong members of the security team. Under his orders, frightened male residents helped move whatever useful materials they could find. Tables, cabinets, old wooden boards. Anything sturdy enough was piled up around the staircase connecting the first and second floors. Soon, the passage was completely blocked. Only a small opening remained, just large enough for someone to crouch through and observe the situation below. Listen carefully. Dao Ba wiped sweat from his forehead and shouted at everyone. If those things break through here, everyone dies. So keep your eyes open. If you hear anything downstairs, report immediately. After that, he assigned 2 sharp-looking guards to lead people through the building. Search carefully. Binoculars, flashlights, batteries, knives, scissors, ropes. Anything useful, collect it. Dao Ba stood in the hallway with his arms crossed. Anyone hiding supplies will have trouble getting food later. Driven by both fear and survival instinct, the collection went surprisingly smoothly. Many residents were unwilling, but faced with armed guards and the threat of the snow corpses, they had little choice. The collected items were moved into an empty room on the 2nd floor, waiting for inventory. Dao Ba looked at the results and finally relaxed slightly. Then he remembered another order I had given him. Everyone listen. Starting today, you train every day. Stances. Weapon practice. Anyone who slacks off won't get dinner. He pointed downstairs. Think about those monsters. If you don't want to die, then train until you can actually fight. The guards exchanged looks. After remembering the terrifying creature downstairs, none of them dared complain. Back on the 11th floor, I finally turned away from the window. Su Man and Chun Mingyao had finished arranging the newcomers and were standing nearby, waiting. Zhou Yun, Zhao Qian, and Xiao Yu stood a little farther away, still cautious. My eyes fell on Xiao Yu again. The girl lowered her head. Her hands were tightly clasped together. Her thin frame looked even smaller inside her oversized. Old clothes, Su Man. Yes, master. Find her some clean, warm clothes that fit. I pointed toward Xiao Yu. These are too worn out. Su Man immediately nodded. Yes, master. I'll prepare them. A trace of gratitude appeared in Zhou Yun's eyes. She quickly pulled her daughter closer. Quick, thank him. Xiao Yu looked up timidly. Thank you. Then she hesitated. Brother Lin. I simply nodded. Then I looked at Zhao Qian and Zhou Yun. You too as well. Clean yourselves up. I don't need people who can't take care of themselves. Yes, master. Yes, Brother Lin. They answered quickly. Go handle your tasks. The living room soon became quiet. Su Man took Xiao Yu to find suitable clothes. Chun Mingyao guided Zhou Yun and Zhao Qian through basic cleaning work. Everyone began adapting to the rhythm of this shelter that I sat down on the sofa. Finally, I had time to deal with my own matters that I closed my eyes. My consciousness sank into my mind that a familiar blue screen appeared that daily sign-in available. Would you like to sign in now? I looked over the options. 1. Basic telekinesis enhancement potion. Slightly increases telekinetic strength and control precision. 2. Thermal combat dagger. High-frequency vibration blade with powerful heat-cutting ability. Powered by energy cells. 3. Emergency medical kit. Includes basic medicine and equipment for bleeding control, infection treatment, detoxification, and more. 4. Unlimited supply of cola. Perhaps useful for morale. I immediately ruled out the 4th option. A drink might have value in ordinary circumstances. But now, with snow corpses appearing outside, it was almost meaningless. The medical kit was practical. Injuries, illness, and future battles would all require medical support. The thermal dagger was also tempting. A specialized weapon could provide a new way to deal with enemies. But the first option, the telekinesis enhancement potion. My heartbeat quickened slightly. I had already experienced how powerful this ability was. Moving objects, controlling weapons, attacking without touching an enemy. Even the invisible pressure I had used to intimidate Chun Mingyao. Telekinesis was my greatest advantage, and now, with the appearance of snow corpses, I would likely need to rely on it more and more. Strength, precision, control. All of them mattered. I didn't hesitate. Choose option 1. Selection confirmed. Congratulations, host. You have obtained Basic Telekinesis Enhancement Potion. The item has been stored in system space and can be retrieved at any time. A faint blue glow appeared inside my system space. A crystal-like vial floated there quietly. The next stage of this frozen apocalypse was beginning, and I needed every advantage I could get. I didn't take the potion immediately. I held back my impatience and continued examining the system screen. After the sign-in was completed, the blue interface did not disappear right away. In the corner, I noticed something new. A tiny progress bar, almost impossible to notice, flickered briefly and moved forward by a barely visible amount. Doomsday Ecology Database. Frozen Corpse Variant Unlock Progress. 1%. A smaller line of text flashed beneath it before fading. My eyes narrowed. Doomsday Ecology. Database? Frozen corpse variant? Unlock progress. This had never appeared before. Was it triggered because I had personally witnessed the snow corpse and interacted with it indirectly? That meant the system was more than just a simple reward mechanism. IT was recording, analyzing, studying this changed world. If this database could eventually unlock completely, I might gain detailed information about snow corpses and even other creatures that appeared in the future, their habits, their weaknesses, their threats. That kind of information would be priceless. To IT seemed hiding inside the building, and waiting was not enough. If I wanted to unlock more information faster, I needed to actively investigate these dangers. Of course, only when I could guarantee my own safety. The blue screen slowly disappeared. I opened my eyes. A sharp light flashed briefly in them. With a thought, the pale blue telekinesis enhancement potion appeared in my hand. The vial felt cold against my fingers. I removed the cap and drank it without hesitation. The liquid had almost no taste, but the moment it entered my body, a cool current rushed upward and spread into my mind. For an instant, it felt like my thoughts had been washed clean. Everything became clearer, sharper. The slight mental exhaustion caused by practicing and using telekinesis vanished completely. I tested my ability. The invisible force responded faster, more precisely, more naturally. IT felt like an extension of my own body. The improvement was not enough to create a complete transformation, but it was a real increase. My strength had taken another step forward. I stored the empty vial away and returned to the window. Below, the snow corpses continued wandering. The threat had not disappeared, but now, alongside caution, I felt something else: curiosity, confidence. I needed more information. The investigation of Building 1 and Building 3, especially the two sisters Chun Mingyao had mentioned, would require careful planning. A rough strategy was already beginning to form in my mind. I put those thoughts aside and walked toward the storage area beside the guest rooms. The newly obtained supplies needed to be stored. From now on, Chun Mingyao would manage the inventory. As I passed one of the guest rooms, I noticed the door was slightly open. A faint wiping sound came from inside. I glanced over. Then I stopped. Someone was cleaning the room. It was Zhou Yun. She was carefully wiping dust from the furniture. The room had been empty for a long time, and a layer of dirt had covered almost everything. She had changed into cleaner clothes and was working seriously, trying to make herself useful in this new environment. When she noticed me standing at the doorway, she immediately froze. "Master." Her voice was quiet. I looked at her for a moment. Unlike Su Man and Qin Mingyao, Zhou Yun was still trying to adapt. She was a mother. A survivor, someone who had made a difficult choice to protect her child. "You're cleaning?" "Yes." She lowered her head slightly. "I thought I should do something useful." I nodded. That answer was exactly what I expected. In this world, survival belonged to those who understood their position and adapted quickly. I stepped into the room. Zhou Yun became visibly nervous. She had understood the situation. She knew that entering this shelter meant accepting my rules. But what mattered most to her was simple: her daughter, not herself. "Don't worry." I spoke calmly. "Your daughter is safe here." Zhou Yun looked up. A trace of relief appeared in her eyes. "Thank you." Her voice carried genuine gratitude. "I only hope you'll continue treating Xiao Yu well." That was her greatest concern. I remembered the frightened girl from earlier. "I already told you. As long as you follow the rules, you and Xiao Yu will be protected." Zhou Yun slowly nodded. The tension in her expression eased slightly. She had made her choice. Not because she wanted to, because in this frozen world, survival required compromises. And for a mother, protecting her child was the one thing that mattered above everything else. I left the room. There were still many things to handle: the snow corpses, the other buildings, the future threats hidden beneath this frozen apocalypse. The world had changed. I had to change with it. The room was quiet. Dust floated through the beams of sunlight slipping between the curtains, turning the abandoned guest room into a strange mixture of warmth and loneliness. I looked at Zhou Yun. She had made her choice. Not because she wanted this life, but because the world outside had forced everyone into making impossible decisions. For her, the most important thing was simple: her daughter had to survive. I understood that. "You don't need to worry about Xiao Yu." My voice was calm. "As long as you follow the rules here, she'll be safe." Zhou Yun looked at me for a long moment before slowly nodding. "Thank you." Her voice was quiet. There was still fear in her eyes, But there was also relief in this frozen apocalypse. Safety itself had become the most valuable thing. Before I could say anything else, knock, knock. A hesitant knock came from outside. Then a familiar young voice sounded through the door. Mom? Are you inside? It was Xiaoyu. I got new clothes from Sister Sue. I wanted to show you. Zhou Yun froze immediately. Her expression changed. The calm she had finally managed to regain disappeared in an instant. Xiaoyu. She instinctively moved toward the door that I stopped her with a glance. Wait. A few seconds later, the footsteps outside slowly faded away. Only after confirming that Xiaoyu had left did Zhou Yun finally relax. She lowered her head, taking a deep breath. The tension in her shoulders gradually disappeared that I understood her reaction, and no matter what happened, she was still a mother first. Meanwhile, inside the top floor of Building 3 the layout was similar to my apartment. But without power and heating, the place felt completely different. Cold, silent, almost lifeless. The curtains were tightly closed, blocking the weak daylight. Only a few candles provided illumination that on the sofa sat two girls who looked almost identical. The famous twin sisters from Minghua University, Chu Yuqing, Chu Yufei. The sisters had awakened abilities during the disaster, and unlike ordinary survivors, they had discovered something extraordinary. They were no longer powerless. Big sister. Chu Yufei leaned against Chu Yuqing and complained, I'm freezing. Her tone was playful. You're basically a walking heater now. Let me borrow some warmth. Chu Yuqing rolled her eyes. You always treat your ability like a toy. Despite her words, a faint red glow appeared around her body. The temperature nearby rose slightly. Chu Yufei immediately smiled. See? I knew you cared about me. You're impossible. Chu Yuqing shook her head, but there was a small smile on her face. The two sisters had very different personalities. Chu Yuqing was cautious. She thought about risks. She understood that the world had changed. Chu Yufei, however, was more carefree. Her gaining supernatural abilities felt like receiving a gift. She raised her hand that a small flame appeared in her palm almost the same moment. A crystal of ice formed above her other hand. The two completely opposite powers existed. Together, fire, ice, their abilities were extraordinary. But Chu Yuqing still looked toward the dark window with concern. The gunshots from Building 2 a few days ago. She lowered her voice. Someone there has weapons. And maybe abilities too. Chu Yufei looked at the flame in her hand, then smiled. So what? We have power now. Her eyes shone with confidence. No matter what happens, we can protect ourselves. Chu Yuqing did not answer. She only hoped her sister's confidence would not turn into carelessness, because this world was no longer the world they knew. Back in Building 2, Apartment 1101, the atmosphere was completely different. Warm, bright, organized. Lunch had already been prepared that I sat at the main seat while the others stood nearby. The difference between this place and the outside world was obvious. Outside, people struggled against freezing temperatures and monsters. Here, there was hot food, clean water, a safe shelter. That contrast made the value of this place even clearer. Su Man stood closest to me. She had already adapted to the environment and handled tasks naturally. Chen Mingyao stood slightly behind her. She was still adjusting. The role of managing supplies suited her better than anything else. She was carefully observing everything, memorizing details, and thinking about how to improve the system later. That was exactly why I had chosen her. Not everyone needed to fight. A strong organization also needed people who could manage resources. Zhou Yun stood quietly nearby. She was calmer than before, though the worry in her eyes had not completely disappeared. Her attention occasionally drifted toward Xiaoyu. That was understandable that a mother's biggest concern would always be her child. Zhao Cheng was still nervous. She had not fully adapted to this place yet. Every movement was cautious. Every word was carefully considered. As for Xiaoyu, she was wearing the warm clothes Su Man had found for her. The little girl looked much healthier than before. She sat quietly, occasionally glancing at the food on the table. When she noticed me looking at her, she quickly lowered her head, but unlike before, she no longer looked terrified. The word brother seemed to have created a small distance from fear. She was still young. She only understood that this place was warm, that her mother was safer here. That was enough for now. The meal continued quietly. I looked toward the window. The snow had stopped, but the real changes had only begun. Snow corpses, new abilities, unknown dangers. This frozen apocalypse was revealing more and more secrets, and I needed to become stronger before those secrets became threats.